بعدما أشار له المسؤولون العسكريون.
The United States is in a state of security and surprise.
We fear this. We fear that they have something out that majority of the people don't know about.
Olan tüm halkların hakları gibi haklar. Ne aşağı ne yukarı. Ne fazla ne az.
Pent-up feelings that may result from decades of repression and people who've had members of their family killed by that regime.
A lot of killers. Get a lot of killers. Why you think our country's so innocent?
But I won't attack it because someone sicks me on. I don't let anybody use me to fight their battles.
I sometimes miss that intro because it goes pretty hard. I haven't used it in about a year. Part of it is to not scare off all my more normie guests, to be quite frank, but it's to remind people today that last quote by Malcolm X, if you wonder where that comes from. You don't get to use me to fight your battles. All right. And so when I don't, and you make lazy criticism, now, all the people here in the chat today, almost all of you have never done this, and you call me a nihilist, or confused, or an ultra-leftist, or fatalistic. This is a waste of your time. It's not even a waste of mine. So ask yourself why you are doing that. Now, the easiest thing that I normally say is sunk cost syndrome. A lot of what I say is about the practices of the left, broadly construed as a moving target that is constantly reactive. All right. It is always reacting to a set of stimuli. It is picking path dependencies. It is going down those paths that are well-worn grooves, but they're well-worn grooves to nowhere. All right. So when people are coming at me all the time, like, oh, you're just arrogant. I mean, I am arrogant. Like, we've already discussed this. But the idea that I don't admit that I'm wrong, or that that I don't think about the implications of what's being said or what I say, that stuff gets on my nerves. Now, I realize there's a certain amount of chumming in the water of the witless that happens on any social media platform. There's always haters, and a lot of the haters are not really all that interested in understanding what their hate is about. And I get that. So I'm inviting on someone to talk to me, and we're going to be interacting with the chat today. I did an episode with him recently, but I didn't release it to the public because we started off talking about Dune, and we ended up being so black-pilled that even I felt that it was off-brand. So, welcome, Mean Gene Bajalan.
Hey, Varn, how's it going?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. I should really be in the champagne room, but since you called me last minute, I'm here. I'm here. I'm queer. I'm ready to show no fear. You know, all that good stuff. How are you doing today, Varn?
I'm okay. I have time because it's the end of school of the semester. People wonder why I've done too many live streams, and I am avoiding getting in chat wars by just deciding to stream about it. Why mess with Facebook fighting when you could just yell at the void?
I have been noticing that you have been expressing you. I can see you're jonesing to get back on Twitter, but you're diverting that energy to Facebook, to your Facebook posts.
Yeah, and mostly actually from discussions that happen on your wall.
On my wall, yes.
So I mean, look, I see what Twitter does to you. You have devoted stalkers now.
I do. I'm very proud. I'm very proud of that. Yes.
What are they stalking you for, Gene?
For not being sufficiently anti-imperial enough, for both sides during the Ukraine Russia war, and plenty of good stuff like that. Also being accused of being an ethnic chauvinist because apparently I secretly want the formation of a Kurdish state.
Wait, what? I thought you.
Hey, look, I'm just proud that I've made it as a podcast personality because now I have my own reply guy.
I mean, that's all of our dreams as academics or formal academics, I suppose.
Yeah, to get a reply guy. But yeah, both sides are in both sides in the Russia-Ukraine war is what I prefer to frame it as neither siding.
Yeah, no camp. Not for any fucking camp. No third camp either. There's no like third camp for me to be happy about. Like, and I guess for a lot of people that sounds nihilistic, but it's like, there's a series of events that happen that are mutually constitutive of the situation. And I mean, I do think NATO is probably the person who kicked the dominoes over, but everybody chooses to respond the way they choose to respond, and new sets of dominoes fall, right? Like, that's the way this shit works.
Mm-hmm. It is. I mean, you know how it is. People are desperate to find something to cling on that's solid and concrete, and picking a side, especially one that is far away from where you actually live, is a good way of kind of doing that. Because, in the absence of a Bernie program and a Bernie movement, what else is there for people to do?
Well, the thing is that the Bernie movement was stupid.
Well, you might. I mean, that may or may not be true. But my point would be, at least it's something to do, right? And it's something domestic to do. At least they're playing the game in the correct pitch, as it were. They might be playing American football, actually be playing, tennis, but at least they're in the right place. But I think, and I think we've talked about this before, in the absence of any kind of domestic progress, people will, like, their gaze will go abroad to find rays of hope, whether that's Xi Jinping is going to liberate us, or the West is about to collapse, or whatever, right?
So yeah, you can get on watch today. I was sent by a friend of the show, Rid Rahiman Balaji. And he was sending me stuff that Ben Norton was posting on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben Norton said some smart things, that imperialism is not a policy done by one state, but a system. Although he still sees the system as totally ensconced in the U.S. alone, because he's it's that shock of recognition of nepo babies. Particularly when their old progressive magazines run out of money and they look for another way to garner funding and attention. But nonetheless, he's not wrong about that. But he posted something and didn't seem to realize what he implied, because he said the only people who were outside of the system of imperialism were Russia, Syria, and Iran. And I just, very quickly responded to Rid, like, duh, they're sanctioned. They can't get in on it. Also, I mean, given his multipolarista stance is usually about backing China, he didn't try to claim that China wasn't part of the system. That it was like maybe a counter force within the system or something. And I was just like, so the only way not to be involved in the system of imperialism is for the imperialists themselves to shut you out?
That's pretty much what it comes down to. It's like you've been kicked out the party, and then you go, well, I never wanted to go to the party in the first place. When, of course, everybody really deep down wants to get invited to the party. It's not like they're attempting to construct like an alternative economic system, is it? Ultimately, it comes down to, the global capitalist bloc between the kind of those states that have been designated, those states that have been designated rogue states are kind of kicked out of the system, and their main desire is to come back into the system. But of course, so that's not real. It's not really ideological economic anti-imperialism if you're sanctioned, and then you just have to deal with it.
I mean, I'll give the Iranian government, theocracy, whatever, that it didn't really want to be dominated by the U.S. I mean, that's absolutely true. And that it does help multiple global struggles. However, most of the examples that people throw at me are all, with the exception of Palestine, are weirdly sectarian, involving Shia, usually either Ismaili or Twelver. And that's just not like brought up. Like, hey, there is a sectarian dimension to what they're doing here. Just like there's a sectarian dimension to what the Saudis are up to in Yemen, even though there's also the probably more real and more substantive competing for global capital resources. But, a lot of the response to me, one of the things is you just don't understand. If you just had capital controls, things would be less nihilistic. So, I'm actually quoting a criticism that sent me off today. So keep being confused. And I was like, okay.
Who said that to you?
There's some dumb shit on a commenter. I mean, I don't know that they're dumb shit even, but like the comment was so like, if you just understood capital controls,
I mean, capital controls work, I guess, if you're the United States, but anybody else, including pretty big imperial powers like Great Britain, aren't going to be able to use capital controls, because when they tried to use them in the past, guess what? They didn't work.
Well, the problem is, to have capital controls, you have to have an internally productive economy. And there are all of 3 big ones, you look at your net exporters. One of the other issues that I had with Norton, though, is the way him and Hudson, and it was definitely, he was getting his talking points from Hudson here, we're setting this up, is it made it look like, and I heard this actually on The Dig 2 years ago, too, from some analysts, that they were claiming that any next net exporter is being imperialized. So Germany is being imperialized by the U.S., and China is being imperialized by the U.S. because they're net exporters. And I'm like, that is the dumbest shit I have ever heard. Like, why are they net exporting? To get foreign capital. Why do they want to get foreign capital? To develop their own shit. Like, there's 2 ways to do that. The other way is to go back to the system that Lenin was critiquing in the early 20th century, where you do it through direct war and direct colonialism.
Yeah, I mean, and some people still do that, Some countries still try and loot their neighbors in order to develop their productive forces. But really, I mean, it's a global capitalist system. And, whatever one thinks of the political regime in China, whether one thinks it's a socialist regime or not, it is part of the global capitalist economy and a central part of that global capitalist economy. And again, however people want to theorize it, it looks like they are engaging in some kind of economic imperialism in Africa. It's just they're doing it nicer than the Americans or the French have been.
Well, I was going to say, it's the French. The Americans are only concerned about Africa or geostrategic. They don't really
strategic. Yeah, I mean the French in particular.
Yeah. The French that are assholes. I mean, we're assholes, but for different reasons.
Yeah, I mean the French are pretty terrible. If you have a choice between the French and the Chinese, probably go with the Chinese, right?
Absolutely.
At least you get something built. I mean, they're just doing a better job of it. Like China's just doing capitalism better than everybody else.
I would push back on that, since they're at a lower GDP growth rate than we are. they were doing capitalism better than everybody else.
Well, I suppose it depends about how you define doing better than everybody else. Well, they have a kind of productive economy, which seems nice.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's hard, Djene. I know you that you are an anti-American, although you also secretly hate America. Well, not even so secretly. You bitch about it all the time. And look,
well,
I get it.
I'm the only person who likes America in the abstract, but actually hates it in the reality, because usually it's the other way around. Usually it's like people like hate America, but they all secretly want to be like in America eating burgers. I'm like,
well, yeah, like Chinese podcasters who got their education in the U.S., made their money in the U.S., and now hide in, Southeast Asia, not going back to the country that they're explicitly advocating for. Yeah, those guys. Yeah, there's a lot of that. I don't know, man. I mean, like, look, you and I are similar in that we find anti-Americanism to be superficially true. I mean, like, America is a global hegemon, and of course, because it's a global hegemon, it fucking sucks. I have a hard time believing that there's such thing as a good global hegemon, though. Like,
I mean, I think by definition, you can't be a good global hegemon. But my point is always that it isn't a particular malady of American society or something specific in the American psyche that makes, America, quote unquote, uniquely bad. It's the biggest imperial power. And a lot of the reason that it's the biggest imperial power is kind of accidents of history. For example, all the other powers in the middle of the 20th century decided to destroy each other, leaving most of the productive capacity. The only major industrialized country not hit by everything was the United States. That gave it a huge lead, and it basically kind of operated as the liquidators of the British Empire, established the kind of contours of the new world system, and did something smarter than the old empire builders, but rather generalized the model of the nation state, granting everybody sovereignty, getting rid of this kind of contradiction between, liberal states and the fundamentally illiberal nature of a colonial empire, and created a universal system of nation states where, instead of controlling things directly, they controlled things indirectly through, peer-to-peer military training programs and working with indigenous elites. Like, imperialism is not possible, right? And this is important, like, on the scale that imperialism takes place, it's not possible without, local forces supporting that imperial rule. And that's always been true, right? That's always been true. Like, we have this myth that, 500 Spanish conquistador veterans of the Reconquista conquered the Aztec Empire, which is bullshit, because actually they arrived and then they were successful with huge amounts of auxiliary indigenous troops who were with the assets.
I mean, one of the things we have to deal with the Mexica is the Mexica were literally eating the warriors of these subjugated tribes. It wasn't hard for a bunch of fail sons with better swords to convince,
and horses,
yes, to convince. Guns were, first people go, the guns were shitty,
and the plague.
Yeah, the plague isn't why they helped, though. Like,
but yes, they did have better swords,
right? The steel sword is the thing that gave them the advantage, and the fact that the Spanish fought to kill, whereas the Aztecs fought to bring back captives to kill later. So it's the plagues they brought were pretty extensive. Obviously, I mean, they literally depopulated most of North America before the English even got here. But nonetheless, it was a power play because the Mexica themselves were from where I live now. Like, they were outsiders to Central Mesoamerica. They only seemingly had dominance in the area for 150 years. I mean, which is a long time, and the United States has only been around for 250 years, and it's actually a fairly old nation as far as these things go. But still, So I think I think that for those of you who think it's like, oh, it was a technological advantage. No, it was two different types of warfare, someone said, and the fact that there were masses of people wanting to overthrow their Mashika overlords and didn't quite realize the deal they were making with their geopolitically far away Aztec conquerors until they weren't far away anymore. I mean, not Aztec conquerors, Spanish conquerors. It's there you go. Adolf Reed talking about compradors. There's no compradors in America. Compradors only happen when there's a faraway imperial core that you can link up to for trade and betray your local bourgeoisie. But talking about compradors in the fucking America, I mean, in America and Europe is a joke.
Yeah, I mean, I think the also the title of comprador is problematic in the sense that it assumes that certain people should feel an affinity with their own nation. Everybody, like I like to say, the national bourgeoisie is one good business deal away from becoming the comprador bourgeoisie, right? That's what it comes down to. These fights are usually internal dynamics driving these fights. So I have a problem with the notion of a comprador bourgeoisie. Not to say that's not to say that there aren't people who act whose economic interests align with those of the imperial power, but it kind of assumes that the natural state of being should be that the bourgeoisie is patriotic and loyal to the nation state, when that's not what the bourgeoisie is anyway, right?
Ever.
They
constructed nation states just to betray them. Like, come on.
Because nation states work really well as kind of bulkheads against revolution. You have a revolution in one country, but then you contain it in that country, right? You can contain it within that international system. This is why I often argue that the decolonization was kind of paradoxical in that obviously empires are a bad thing. But in the longer term, it turned out to be a huge defeat for the socialist international movement, precisely because it generalizes the capitalist form of government.
Yeah. Well, I want people to understand where comprador comes from. Comprador is a term that was actually used by the Portuguese in trade ports in Macau. And so it got picked up by both the Guomindang and the Chinese communists to talk about locals who were aligned to make money with the Portuguese. That's its origins. When the Comintern kind of falls apart, and you have to remember, the Chinese are the early representative in the Comintern for China wasn't even the Chinese Communist Party; it was the Guomindang. The left Sun Yat-sen represented the socialists in the Comintern for in the beginning. And by the time the Chinese Communist Party is really on its own and really broken out from that in the 30s and 40s, when they're really coming up after World War, after being able to fight the Civil War in the context also of World War II, the Comintern's gone. There's no Comintern for them to join. They can join the Cominform. The reason why that's important for people to understand is that there were two strains of Chinese communist thought before Mao. There's the proletarian nation thesis, which there's two people who came up with that idea.
Mussolini.
It came up in China and Mussolini. That developed. They weren't influencing each other. It developed separately. But the idea was, well, since this is an international system, we can talk about nations as classed as opposed to just
And
classes
this,
as class.
this is what the fundamental problem with the concept of a national bourgeoisie versus a comprador bourgeoisie is that it really what it is a cover for class collaboration.
Right.
That's what it is.
It is what it is. That's why, and in most of these developmentalist states, you have the expansion from Lenin's the dictatorship of the proletariat and peasant. That's Lenin. To the mass line, to like what you see in the DPRK, which is like the coalition of three classes, and one of those classes is the intellectia, like the Confucian gentlemen. That's what that little paint stick is for.
Mhm.
The Mao talks about the good petit bourgeois versus the bad petit bourgeois, in addition to good versus bad peasants. And look, I think Mao handled the peasants a lot better than, say, Stalin. But nonetheless, there's a pretty big distinction there. The one thing that when people talk to me about like China today, I mean, I don't think that what China's up to is particularly aggressive. They're not doing gunboat imperialism. That's not what they're up to. But the idea that they're doing this development out of the kindness of their hearts is a strange notion. They give decent deals, particularly if you're in Africa, but not great ones. I mean, they do not, for example, forgive debt. They've had to recently, but that was hard to get done. And since then, the Belt and Road Initiative has really fallen down. Now, the question that I like to ask people is what the Marshall Plan did for Europe, is that imperialism? Because if your answer is yes, and I'm not here to tell you one way or the other, then in a way, the Belt and Road Initiative is non-gunboat imperialism. If your answer is no, then
you have a stronger case to say what China is doing isn't imperialism. It's just trade intercourse.
Right.
I
the
mean,
Belt and Road before Sri Lanka had its really complicated its things, and then the Russia-Ukraine war accelerated that complication, thus breaking down their ability to even deal with the fringes of Europe. The Belt and Road was basically the Marshall Plan on crack. It was attempting to get around the U.S. domination of deep water trade and the reason why the U.S. dominates deep water trade is literally gunboats. Like, that's how it does it.
Yeah, they control the sea lanes, and honestly, the Chinese don't want to have to pay for that either. But having a back door with all these railways and motorways and trade connections, it's not an alternative to deep water trade, but they're not putting all their eggs in one basket, and that's pretty wise. I mean, the Chinese are ultimately pretty
But apparently we aren't either. I mean, that's the thing. Like, the idea that decoupling would cripple the U.S., that hasn't borne out. Like, because who's been actually accelerating the decoupling? It hasn't been China. Like, I mean, who's been pushing that? It's been the Biden administration and the Trump administration, and it began in the Obama administration. I know we forget this, but
yeah, I mean, that's what the Trans-Pacific Partnership was all about. The great irony of the Trans-Pacific Partnership was that, it got tanked when Trump came to power, but it probably would have benefited, what Trump saw as America's need to decouple from China, as it was kind of a way for the U.S. to dominate Pacific trade.
Right. I mean, the irony of, for example, BRICS as a counter block that's always thrown out in a lot of left spaces, right? And I've heard that now for literally almost 20 years. Is that the BRICS coalition includes two partners that have thoroughly integrated trade with the U.S. and one partner that, even though it's friendly to Russia, India, is politically aligned in regards to China with U.S. interest. So it's very hard to imagine like Modi, Putin, and Xi all holding hands on anything but when their agreement about NATO, messing up or infringing on Russia's security interests, because India doesn't really want that either. But they're cooperating with U.S. military interests in Southeast Asia all the time. So it's interesting to me when people throw this stuff at me. I'm like, okay, fine. So you think the answer is capital controls? Well, like I said, China can do it. Russia's being forced to do it. The United States can do it. Who else can do it? And here's the thing. It can do it for a little while. But, Djene, wouldn't you agree entropy would kick in eventually? You can't run an autarkic economy closed off forever. No country on Earth has ever done that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a completely viable policy, number one. Most of the countries that are cited as being autarkic were never actually that autarkic. They were always relying on something from outside, and we're talking about states. And obviously, there are villages in the Amazon rainforest, even to this day, that don't need anything from the outside world to survive. But when we're talking about states, when we're talking about state system, you go back even to the pre-modern era, look at something like world systems theory, yes, there isn't like a completely integrated global economy, but you have regional economies that are linked together that have areas of production. Even countries that try to close themselves from the outside world never really close themselves from the outside world. Everybody talks about Japan closing itself from the outside world. And obviously it did to a certain extent, but they still allowed trade with the Dutch. They just wanted to control it. And the main thing for closing off was less to do with economics and more to do with the fact that, they were getting sick of all these Christian missionaries turning up into Japan and converting people to Christianity. And the Dutch were a better option because they weren't as interested they just wanted money, right? So, I think there's a lot of mythologies out there about autarkic things. Now, do you want to locate, can you kind of build up your own industrial base internally and reduce your dependency on outside trade and stuff? Yeah, that's, there's been periods in modern history where there's been moves towards greater self-sufficiency, moves away from towards greater global integration. But it's kind of, it's a swinging pendulum, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, and it's going to swing depending on all kinds of other factors. And that's why I'm just always blindsided by people who just think that national realignments or whatever are breaking the world up into different blocks. I mean, like that's going to lead to anything like the end of capitalism, particularly when only a few of those states even claim to have that as a long-term goal and an increasingly far off goal. And it's very funny to me watching American leftists claim that these countries are socialist when they damn well know that these countries themselves say they have not achieved the productive capacity to even reach socialism. Like that's what the countries themselves claim internally. That's not like me criticizing them. Like
Iran is not claiming it's building a socialist economy either. Some of these countries don't even have a pretense of trying to build a socialist economy. Like Iran has basically been forced to go, undergo a import substitute industrialization process because of sanctions, right? What is the main objective of Iranian foreign policy, Ron? Mm-hmm. It's to break sanctions, right?
Right.
Like that's what they want to do. They want to integrate into the world economy, right? That's their objective. They want to do it on their own terms. Like people don't want to be pushed around by the United States. They want to be able to trade with the Italians, the French, the Russians, whoever, right? They want to be a player on the field. And America is aggressively going after them. First of all, they put sanctions on, and then they threaten to put sanctions on people who trade with Iran, right? But what does that tell you? It tells you their objective is to trade and to be part of this world economy. Everybody's a neoliberal now, Who was it who cut all the subsidies in Iran? It was Ahmadinejad, right? Like Venezuela doesn't want to be cut off from the world economy, right? Venezuela want to be part of the world economy. The reason they're suffering, like, yeah, I guess there's like internal mismanagement and things like that, but like also US sanctions and not being able to be part of the world economy.
Yeah, well, people who are talking about the supply chain and workforce, one of the things that all these countries are facing, including China, is more and more of the stuff just automated, and you require less and less of it, and more concentration in very small material areas to do. See the work of Philip Nill on this; he's been writing about it. So there's less low hanging fruit for that kind of developmentalist project to even work. Basically China in the 80s took all the air out of the room for that, and when people try to do it now, they're going to leapfrog off the technology of we leapfrog off of the British, and the East Asians are leapfrog off us, and technology is better, but they leapfrogged off us, and that's how this stuff works. People will leapfrog off China as well. The issue is, once they do that, this technology requires, like, its efficiency and productivity is really, really high now. You don't need that many workers. And so everybody's getting kind of stuck in the middle income trap, and rich countries are reverting back to the middle income trap. So it's a thing to see. And that the reason why we know they're reverting back is that's why they're trying to pick up earlier stages of industrial development back. They felt like, it's a capitalist decadence cycle. They've let their own productive economy fall too far.
They've just, like Britain, especially over the last like 30 years. There's a really good picture of London, that it has London in 1980 and London in 2020. And, there's virtually no high rise in London in 1980. And I remember when I first went to London as a kid, there wasn't really that. The highest tower was British Telecom Tower, right? If I remember correctly, which was a state enterprise, right? But when I moved to university, all this high finance shit got built. The Gherkin, all these big Canary Wharf, etc., etc. So these countries all became overly financialized, right? Britain just basically became the outskirts of London, right? Tony Blair was the one who put the boot in finally with British industry. We don't make cars. When I was growing up, they used to make a car in Britain called the Rover, right? Which was a cool car. And don't make it anymore, right? They do make some like foreign cars there. So yeah, Britain just became a big financialized mess. And I guess the problem with being a financialized mess is you beggar like a lot of people, right? You end up with like, Lenin talks about this, right? You end up with an economy that is just servicing the needs of rich people.
Well, honestly, it's also Britain's no longer even good at that, because how it was able to do that was monetary shenanigans with access to labor pools from Europe, keeping its cost of labor down, while also maintaining and having access to the trade zone, but not entering into the currency zone. So it was able to do fiscal shenanigans that other countries in the Eurozone could not do.
But now
can't do that.
Over. Now it's just endless inflation, stagnant wages, and spiraling house prices.
Yep. Welcome to being Europe's Argentina, while Argentina becomes whatever the fuck it's going to be under Malay. But like, there you go. And I don't, I think, there was a video, when I said that Bernieism was stupid, I didn't mean that like Medicare for all was dumb, or anything like that. What I meant was that
shooting for the presidency
first, without trying to change the party he was in, even like, like it was very circular. There was, I came to this conclusion in 2019. There's a separate guy from Platypus who came to it completely independent of me, that the rhetoric was circular. Like, we need a workers' movement so Bernie can get empowered to empower a workers' movement, that we need to have Bernie get in the power to empower. It was literally that. Like, that was the rhetoric. And it was
Well, look, I wouldn't say it was totally stupid. It was like, okay, our previous attempts at building power bottom up have failed. What about a different strategy? There's this guy that's running. And remember, like, Bernie wasn't like the A choice. People were like, Elizabeth Warren should win. Elizabeth Warren should run, right? That was who people were talking about in 2015. But then Bernie, who was like not super well known at the time, it's not like everybody knew who Bernie Sanders. He wasn't a household name. Politicos would know who he is. Oh, he's the cranky old kind of socialist independent from Vermont. But Vermont's a small state. He went on Bill Maher, I think, in 2015, etc., etc. He got some success, and then they latched onto that success and thought, well, if we combine our forces, perhaps we can take the presidency and then use that as a vehicle to build up a socialist movement or a workers' movement. Now, in retrospect, it didn't work, but consider the state of affairs in 2015. It seemed like a reasonable shot. It seemed like this whole Occupy Wall Street, bottom-up, leaderless movement stuff wasn't working. So
Bernie is a Ron Paul of fail-son leftists.
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, okay, fine. He's the Ron Paul, but it was I don't want to be too hard on the, I don't want to just dog on the Bernie movement. I understand what the logic behind it is, and you never know. Sometimes things work, right? And sometimes they don't. The problem is the whole movement became not that we're going to use Bernie as a way to build socialism, but it just became a Bernie movement. That's the problem I see. It became entirely focused on the figure of Bernie Sanders as the only person who could deliver anything to us. Well, so rather than being opportunist and saying, hey, this could be a vehicle, it seems to me around, after 2016, Bernie got baked in, right? If that makes sense to you, Varn.
I know that there's a shock of recognition from the DSA types in the world while they're wasting their life and money. But and I don't feel the need to be nice about this shit anymore. In 2016, that is a fair argument. The problem is bringing all those people into the democratic system brought them into the Democratic Party itself. Bernie, not intentionally, I'm not one of those people who think that Bernie was secretly a control opposition sheepdog the whole time. I'm not a conspiracy theorist like that. But it was pretty clear that elements of the Democratic Party saw immediately how to use that. And the desperation of people who frankly, these people weren't the people who were failing from the bottom up. They were looking at the people who were slightly older than them failing from the bottom up over and over and over again. But now what have they done? Like, seriously, what have they done? I mean, they're in an organization that's running out of fucking money. The largest left organization in America. Right? The largest. It doesn't have money, and it doesn't.
No, it doesn't have money. I mean, and basically it became a resume builder for like the apparatus that kind of took over and are willing to burn down the organization to keep their, I mean, like, the whole concept that DSA needs to have a union for the staff of the organization, although to perhaps your average baby leftist sounds like logical, is actually fundamentally dangerous because, of course, labor unionism, trade unionism isn't inherently radical, right? There's nothing inherently revolutionary about labor unionism. It's entirely compatible with capitalist politics. And inside a socialist organization, it just becomes a vehicle for the professional bureaucracy to do what it wants and disregard the feelings of the rank and file members of that organization.
Like the Democratic Party itself does, right? Like
basically, it turned itself into a mini Democratic Party.
But the thing is, it was obvious. Djene, it's not obvious in 2016, all right? But it was obvious by 2018, 2019 that that's what was happening. Throw into that, like, Antifa being cynically used by Democrats as kind of like shock troops and scaremongering tactics to people that you could both valorize in one movement and then like shit on the next. You know, you have the perfect conditions for a popular front to lead to capture not of the left but of center revitalization. And then at the end of it, what you dealt with is the same thing you saw with the SDS, the same thing you saw. I mean, fuck, man, you could even predict this off of the fate of the SPD when it reformulated in the 20s and reformulated again in the 50s. We have seen this happen over and over again. This is why I get mad when people call me confused. You literally can see these patterns play out in a predictable manner over time. They're path dependencies that are obvious, right? Like, you run someone like Bernie, you got one shot. That is a one-shot deal. You fail, you're done. Like, because that won't work again. Like, you can't.
Yeah, the Bernie would have worked in 2016 as a kind of shock to the system because they weren't ready for him, right?
Right.
But just as, I think the mistake, and I will include myself in this, is the thinking that, okay, we have 4 more years to build up a base to propel Bernie to the White House. When you forget, oh yeah, everybody else knows that too, and everybody else is going to act accordingly. And this time around, they're going to be ready. And we saw that happened after Bernie took Nevada. You had that Super Tuesday. They got the Congressional Black Caucus online, and then they just bodied the Sanders movement in a day, right?
Right. And I want people, a friend of the show who I kind of snapped at, Sudip, he's commenting on the chat, so I'm just going to respond to him because I think he's right, but also misses something. Ron Paul's campaign was the beginning of the end of neoconservatism and had to be accommodated, not absorbed, it never took power, but had to be accommodated in the GOP, which is why Trump speaks out of both ends of his mouth about U.S. foreign policy, right? He's both the toughest candidate and the peace candidate, and the peace candidate stuff is because the Ron Paul side of that, the libertarianism aside, because that's not what landed. The exhaustion of the neoconservative war project also landed on the right, and it did build inroads, and it's changed the rhetoric. Josh Hawley is in some ways the ideological great-grandson of Ron Paul.
Neoconservative, and neoconservatism is dead in the Republican Party. It's not dead in the apparatus of the state. It's not dead in the Senate, but it is dead within the broader, within the broader Republican movement, right? If you go back 20 years, people were gung-ho for, going abroad and entering wars. But like you say, Varn, people are tired now. And that neoconservative brand, which was seen as being tough on foreign policy, standing up for America in 2004, doesn't resonate with right-wing people in the United States the same way it did. Because a lot of those right-wing people, a lot more of those right-wing people in the United States are U.S. military veterans who have been in these wars for the last 20 years, right? And who know that they were a waste of money, a boondoggle, and a failure, right? Now, that hasn't led them to question their conservatism in the general sense, but it has led them to, like you say, selectively take from the Ron Paul movement, from paleoconservatism, from Pat Buchanan as well, right? We're seeing, what Trump represents, his foreign policy, is a kind of strange amalgamation of libertarianism and paleoconservatism. It's a Frankenstein of all those things.
It's kind of the revenge.
It's a critique of neoconservatism,
right? It is, and this is what everyone missed. I'm gonna spoil a show, but I want people to listen to this a little bit. I was reading Sam Giddens' Socialism for Realists. It's gonna be a show in a month. I've already recorded it, so you guys know that I record stuff about a month in advance before it even goes on the YouTube channel. But I noticed that while Sam Giddens was right about the left, his projection of he's Canadian, so we can give him, and he's older, his heyday was in the probably the 80s. But I mean, his intellectual productivity period was in the last 20 years. But Giddens, or Gendens, I'm not sure how you say that, analysis of who the right was in 2018 was from 2004. Right? He thought, and he was presenting as he was fighting neoconservative neoliberals along the Paul Ryan, George W. Bush, Bill Cheney, Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney way. That's a fundamental misrecognition of where your enemy actually is. And it really made me realize the problem, and I don't mean to give Chris Catrone a lot of credit, but he's not wrong about this, that leftists are usually fighting the enemy of maybe 2 steps back. They don't recognize what's happened, which is why the anti, or the the post neoliberalness of Trump, the fact that he doesn't just kowtow to it, he's incoherent economically, right? It's a total economic incoherence, but the fact that he doesn't kowtow to it perfectly the way most conservatives did, from Reagan through Bush Sr., through Dole, through Bush Jr. up to Romney, right? That's a consistent line. And it was consistent undergirding all strains of movement conservatism, except for the paleocons, who were really booted out of movement conservatism in the 1990s. Trump reincorporated them back into a power base of the party. And I guess Trump is actually proof that the Bernie strategy, if it had happened in 2016, could have worked, right? Because he would have brought that coalition. Now, ultimately, it also would have corrupted Bernie. That has to be dealt with. There's no way he would have been able not to make deals and stuff that would have made.
And also, when we look at Trump, it's important to note that in a lot of ways he just governed like a regular Republican.
Yeah, no, he absolutely did. I mean, the only exception was his love of terror. The only thing where he really changed. I mean, Djene, you remember when he was kind of pro Iran versus Saudi Arabia in the campaign, and then as soon as he got the power, he reversed it to the standard Republican.
I mean, this is one thing. He ended up appointing John Bolton.
Right? Yeah, I know. And the thing is about those neoconservatives, you can see in the post-Trump campaign.
And my favorite Catrone point about that is he did it so that he would fail. I was like, Chris, come on, man. This is the good czar theory of Donald Trump, that it was all 15-dimensional chess, so he could make the neocon. No, that's who was there, and he appointed him. Right?
Well, this is my, what my critique of Platypus has always been. Mm-hmm. Well, there's many, but the big one on their presumptions, if you read what they say about the left, they're often making correct positions because they know the left. Mm-hmm. When you read what they say about the right in those same essays, and no leftist pays attention to what they're saying the right's going to do.
I pay attention because
I know you do.
They're always wrong.
But yeah, that's what I would say. Their predictions about the right, they take what the right says at face value, which is insane to me because they know not to do it for the left. This is not because I think they're secretly right-wing tailist or whatever. I think they're kind of clueless to the right-wing establishment, in a very real sense.
Yeah, I mean, I often get the feeling that like a lot of platypus is reacting against the liberal circles that they're in. Now I know like Catrone and Spencer, have connections to the heartland or to working class families, and et cetera. But I think they've been driven mad by academia and all the liberals in academia. And so I think there's a reaction against the hysteria that liberals have about like what the Republicans are. And again, rightly, the whole Trump's a fascist discourse, you know, what did it functionally? I don't want to argue whether Trump was a fascist or not. That's kind of like neither here nor there. But what did that discourse serve? It served to like blackmail the left into supporting a popular front strategy, right?
Right, which it won't be able to do again. I don't think. I know there's
No, I
people
don't think.
who thinks that it will, but I just think that is. I think that the subject has the subject that when people talk about like the millennial left, and I talk about it in past tense, I think the subject of left wing energy is no longer there. It's in this small generation of people who've grown up on TikTok who are liberals who've been exposed to anti-imperial discourse through TikTok and through things like the gray zone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, who are also from elite backgrounds, but outside of the United States, because we've had an increasing percentage of people at elite universities come from outside of the US because you can charge them more money. And it's really shifted things. But you know what it reminds me of? I mean, it's like I told someone today, what are the sects that are still around? Like we've seen all these old sects finally die. Starting the first one was like Kasama Project, which was a leftover split from the RCP. But then you can go through like the ISO finally collapsed. SALT's collapsing right now as we speak. Almost all the trot groups, except for the ortho British trots, are collapsing, and the ortho British trots are like trying to take a more like aggressive offensive and start a third communist party, whatever. It's probably going to hurt them too.
They're all irrelevant.
Well, they've always been irrelevant, but
no, I mean the whole left is irrelevant. Right? It's like politically irrelevant.
See, Gene, I actually think that's cope. I think that's cope. The scarier thing is the left was politically relevant.
Now that may be true. I think I think there was a moment where, especially during the Trump years, there was a lot of energy going into the left. But like you say, now it seems that, like, honestly, it feels like that energy is now just getting, as we say in England, spunked off onto TikTok. Like the Bernie movement gave people something concrete to do, right? Now we can argue about whether that was a good thing or not, but you had the Bernie movement, you had the emergence of the squad, in the midterms in 2018 when they first entered the Congress, et cetera. But now AOC is moving to, make peace with the Democratic Party establishment.
Yeah, even alienating the Justice Dems, not just the DSA.
Yeah, and so you end up, you have the rest of the squad, doesn't look like they're in a particularly strong position, or maybe they're secure in their seats, but it doesn't look like they're going to grow significantly or at a rapid pace to become a real force in the Democratic Party. When it, in 2018, when it felt like, oh, this could be the beginning of like a big wave of people coming in, they probably had more leverage, but it feels like a lot of that leverage has gone. So there isn't anyone, I mean, who is there to campaign for, to do campaigning? I mean, a lot of these podcasters who are like the hardcore anti-imperialists nowadays, a lot of them became big on Twitter as a result of the Bernie campaign, literally being campaigners for Bernie, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's that I don't think it's the thing the left is completely irrelevant. I do, because it absolves you of the responsibility of what the left actually did. If you say it's irrelevant, you're actually saying that it didn't matter that that the left in 2018, guys, Pod Save America was talking about the DSA as a serious faction in American politics. Now, why the fuck would they do that?
There was a perception, the reality of the DSA's power versus what matters is the perception of their power, what they could become. And I think the Democratic Party was a little bit concerned, but the fascist discourse, Black Lives Matter protests, that transformed the left into the shock troops of the Democratic Party. And that's kind of a sad thing to say, but it's true, right?
But again, it's not new, Gene. Like we saw
it's
this
not
with the
well, that's the funny thing, isn't it? You have all these Marxist-Leninists now who are like acting, like, I'd never be it's like, dude, the Communist Party of the United States had like communists for Hillary in 2016, and like,
no, they were running. They called
they've been
everyone
doing a popular front since 1936.
They don't endorse candidates, but they were still doing the popular. They only broke with the Popular Front in the lead up to the 2020 Bernie campaign, and that was only a Popular Front where they weren't supporting the center of the Democratic Party. They were willing to support the left of the Democratic Party, because they would go and call all the social democrats ultra-leftist in their stuff. I remember it, and they were dying. I mean, the thing is about the CPUSA is it. I've actually spent the last couple months for the book I'm writing documenting the CPUSA's numbers, so I can actually kind of go through it. It grew in the 30s, mostly in its strong force originally was in the center of the country and around the sewer socialist, right? Because that's also where the CPA, I mean, not CPA, the SPA was strong. Yeah, the Socialist Party was strong. Then when the Socialist Party, between the Debs loss, the Russian Revolution, and what Zinoviev did after the 21 points were added to the Third International, and Debs couldn't join. And I mean that Debs couldn't even split to join, it wasn't a possibility. The CPUSA grew slowly amongst two groups. It was Black workers and Midwestern workers, right? And then in the lead up to World War II, they grew really, really quickly in New York and California. And why is that? Well, until the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, they were seen as opposing the Nazis. Then when the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact happened, they lost a fourth of their membership. But after America enters the war, and FDR, seen, doing war planning with Stalin, the Popular Front begins, just like in France, just like in Italy, the CPUSA balloons. It goes up to 70,000 people or 80,000 people. I've seen both numbers. Then they enter the AFL-CIO in the post-New Deal era and post-war era. They're also significantly older than a lot of the rest of the left at the time. The beginnings of the Red Scares happen, and actually largely led by Democrats initially, in states, and then in the 1950s it kicks off at a national level. By the end of that, the CPUSA is down to 10,000 people, and its big thing that's able to do is support a Black cultural arts movement in the South, which is they continue basically trying to support what was coming out of Chicago and New York and bring it down south and use that as a base for staying relevant in the United States. There's a bunch of other stuff. There was National Bolshevik stuff. There's the Browderist period. All this stuff happens, and it kind of leads to people getting kicked out and recriminating over and over and over again in the early 50s. Plus, they're being crushed by the Red Scare. Plus, they'd been kicked out of the unions after the Taft-Hartley Act, and they get down to between 9,000 and 10,000 people left. During the 60s, the Sino-Soviet split starts to heat up, and it starts splitting people off of the CPUSA.
Yeah, you end up with the Maoist movement, and so much of the new left is Maoism.
Right. It's Maoism. A lot of people think it's Trotskyism and anarchism, and that's weird to me. It's just historically. I mean, it started off. I mean, the early new left wasn't Marxist at all. I mean, it was it was like maybe Marx adjacent. It was like C. Wright Mills and Stoughton Lynn and those guys. But when they came up with the civil rights movement, but when they moved back on the campuses, these freshly formed sectarian organizations that have split off from various groups that often split off from the Communist Party come in under the Maoist guys, and they start building the new communist movement within the kind of broad and new left, right? And they kind of take over the SDS. Well, what happens to the SDS when that happens? The SDS almost immediately collapses. And then you have the formation of all these sectarians that we know from the 70s. And also that's when the other thing that starts happening is the trot splits start going crazy. There was like 3 in the 40s and 50s, but in the 60s, there's like 27 or something. It's
like Shiism, you know?
Yeah, so exactly. Well, the Imam is gone, man. So what do you got? Like,
yeah, exactly. What have you got? I mean, yeah. So, and I think we're heading more to a time like that now. I think we're heading to a time of hypersectarianism, except it's playing out a lot on social media, and the bar to entry for creating a left-wing cult is really low these days. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, in the past, to create a left-wing cult, you had to like organize, you had to go out there with meetings and, you know, like hang out with people and like do all kinds of stuff. Like now you just need to sit by your computer and do what we're doing, just yell at people into the thing. You know, like people mock it, but it's like people like the Vosh and the Hazardine and Jackson Hinkle and the Grazer, these Hassan Piker, these people are the influential people in the left now, right?
It's all streamers. It's
all streamers. It's like
downstream from
people
streamers.
go, oh, it's all marginal. It's like these guys, yeah, like the left may be marginal, but these guys are like way bigger than any like sectarian organization. Look at Shawarma Croissant, and like she had her seat in Seattle, and she was like, you know, the whole party was like, you know, dedicated to keeping her on the council in Seattle. And that was kind of an impasse. And I think we've talked about this before, Ron, like how that seat ended up being the entire focal point for, you know, socialist, what's it? Socialist appeal? Socialist
alternative. Socialist alternative. So it was
yeah, socialist alternative. But then what was her move? To become a podcaster?
Yeah,
but like
and working other thing.
Yeah, she doesn't have the charisma to be a streamer podcaster that's going to have a following. You know what I mean? And that's what it's become. That's what, you know, like my academic friends are always like, gosh, you take these streamers and stuff too seriously. I'm like, I mean, I don't think what they say is particularly serious, but they're the relevant people.
Yeah,
right?
but in a way, that's just telling you that what is the left now? It's red QAnon.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's kind of, I mean, it's with the exception of these protests over Palestine, which is something real. A lot of this is the sectarian kabuki theater of the 70s and 80s.
But
and again,
in streamer format,
right? In streamer with less involvement, so you can like pick it up as an identity, but also you can take it off as an identity really, really quick because it didn't take long to put on. And the one thing that I've really gotten from studying the way these political movements have developed in stream is they come out of and Jason Miles is actually pretty good about this. But like there was a political tinge to a lot of like, and it was a pseudo political tinge, but to a lot of like 90s aughts lifestyle stuff, right? Like punks had a certain politics, blah, 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 blah. Like, well, what happened with these Zoomers is that became less and less relevant as they had access to like all the music on the fucking planet. They don't need these scenes anymore to like, to get into groups. It's not a social thing at all. So they can just be fed algorithmically as alienated little Pringles. But that need for a political identity as a moral identity, right, remains. Like they still need it. They don't get it from church. They don't get it from school. They don't get it anywhere else. But you see it like with 14-year-olds getting on Tumblr and like trying, I'm a Murray Bookchinite today. Now I'm a Bortegist. Now I'm whatever. Like, no, we're all Stalinists now because Stalin wins, you know. I mean, Now, never mind that these people don't really know that much about the Soviet Union. What they tend to do is listen to anti-communist propaganda and flip it. That's what they do. Like,
yeah, I mean, they just assume everything that they've been told is a lie, and so they believe the opposite, right? I mean, this is what people always attack me for. They're like, you always repeat U.S. lies of U.S. imperialism. You're like a U.S. imperialist stooge. I'm like, no, but you can like assess facts, and you can say, if you think everything is a lie, you don't understand how to deal with propaganda, because a lot of propaganda is not about straight up lying, but putting it in a truth sandwich, right?
yeah, these are people who read 1984 and just decided to invert the worldview. Like,
Yeah.
it's
which makes them very susceptible to propaganda. So rather than like looking at claims on the basis, taking a holistic view, who is this written by, what agenda might they have, what evidence is being presented, everything has to fit into a prepackaged position. Otherwise, you're a stooge of imperialism. And that just makes that. Why is that dangerous? Like people have said to me, it's like, well, if people are getting into anti-imperialism just by believing America's bad, surely at the end of the day, functionally, that's the same thing. So as being an anti-imperialist, but trying to be nuanced about what truth is. And I'm like, no.
There's no more American thing right now than to hate yourself. So of course we're all American.
Well, the other thing is, I think it opens people up for complete political disorientation. I think that opens up people for doing a Hitchens, because what happens is like they believe, like they invert the thing that they've been told, right? They become anti-American in a very crude sense. And then when the reality of the world doesn't conform to the good guys, bad guys that they've built up in their mind, then they're like, wait, maybe I was lied to, and you end up being
yeah, it's the Jay Sakai to patriotic socialist, but still anti-imperialist somehow.
Pipeline.
I mean, that's the other thing about this particular moment. It's like you want to be both anti-imperialist and pick up Browderism, but not understand how the U.S. economy works. Like,
don't stop me. Dave Russell in the chat is bringing up my 5-day war with the anti-barista discourse.
These are very anyway. I mean, like, look, I've talked a lot.
That's where we're at. That's where
I've talked a lot of shit, but like, I feel like picking on alienated teenagers is it's the inverse of what liberals do right now, which is to like celebrate the students as the moral conscience of the nation while also supporting the very government that's like sending cops to beat them up. Like, it's a weird
everything is super disorientating, because the kind of ideological structures that people have been raised in are just not making sense anymore. Like, who's the most oppressed, Jews or Palestinians?
I don't want to talk about that shit.
No, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, clearly Palestinians, but still, like,
the point I'm making in the kind of crude DEI liberalism, right? You end up with like, obviously the story of Jewish persecution is like central to the notion of like minority rights, right? While at the same time, like what's going on in Israel is clearly bonkers, and that presents like a contradiction to people. Like it's not easy to define who's the white person.
I mean, they're trying to.
But it doesn't make sense. It's like everybody wants to say, well, Jews are all white. That means they're the white person. Half of Israel is like Middle Eastern.
Yeah, I was about to say 51% is Mizrahi. So
yeah, 51% is Mizrahi. So like it doesn't. They have the black Ethiopian Jews, right? That doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? It like you can't fit it into these American categories that like everybody is so internalized, and it leads to like complete confusion. So basically you have these protests mobilizing the discourse of safety and being repressed on the basis of safety, student safety.
Right. Well, this is the thing. Like the one I want to talk about some domestic goods that are coming out of the Palestine thing, because I think that gets missed in a lot of the pro-anti-Palestine discourse. One, these students demanding to open up the books and making it clear that these universities are basically investment instruments, not schools. That's a good thing.
Yeah, that is a good thing.
To them actually realizing that safety culture is going to be weaponized against them. That's a good thing. That's a really fucking good thing for them to know. Like, so I think this will be a growing moment, but I don't know where it goes. I mean, somebody was telling me the other day, and I've seen this actually, like, yes, the majority of, say, African Americans are still Democrats, right? But like, there's a whole lot of people who I've started picking up like anti-immigrant talking points in the Black community, as if we had a lot of immigration right now. We have a lot of immigration in the media, but like, dudes, we have negative population growth for the first time in forever, because we're not replacing the negative population growth for birth rates with immigrants anymore. We're just not. And so, like, these people are fundamentally misrecognizing things, but it's an easy discourse to pick up, right? Because you feel like the scraps that you were told you were going to get after BLM or whatever, after Obama, et cetera, you're not getting. And things are getting tighter for everyone who's not, making over $180,000 a year.
Well, we talked about this, and it's not just about, even if you are making $180,000 a year, you don't know if you're just going to lose that job and then be destitute either. Right. You can be earning $300,000 a year and then nothing for, you could be a computer programmer on a $200K. You get like a bicycle in the office and they give you as many M&Ms as you want. And then the next minute you're unemployed on the dole because they've fired 60% of the staff, right? Everything is becoming more insecure. The entire creative industry is now becoming the preserve of those who have money, right? There's no chance to be in music, to be in film and television unless you're willing to be extremely poor and insecure, or you come from a wealthy family. That's
which usually, yeah. I mean, that's what's happening. It's even happening in like teaching.
It's even happening in teaching and academia as well. Like, once you get an academic job, you have maybe a tenure track position, you have a stable job. But the question is, like, will you get that position, and can you sustain yourself for, well, in America, 7 years of poverty without any support? And that's not feasible for people, so they can't get to that position to get that job, which is disappearing anyway.
Right.
So they can't even, it's just it's a real. So yeah, like people are flailing about and they're angry, but I think that's just not necessarily going to go to the left.
No, it's absolutely not. I mean, I think we're going to see it in 2024. It's not going to go to the left. I think we're going to be surprised at the voting coalitions, because right now it's hard to measure. And I don't want to sound like a normie pundit. I fucking hate them, but it's also true. They don't even know how to reach people who aren't really highly educated. Like, they fall out of the polls over and over again, and they assume that voting is going to be the same as it is in midterms, which now used to favor Republicans, but now it favors Democrats because Democrats are overwhelmingly educated.
And nobody under 50 is answering their mobile phone to an unknown number.
No, absolutely. I mean, fuck, I don't even, I'm not that far off from 50. I'm not answering my mobile phone for shit. Like,
yeah, exactly. So like, people are writing Biden off. I think that's perhaps a mistake, because, like, Biden's pretty unpopular with his base, but I get the sense that there's a whole load of soft Republican women in the suburbs who might not say it openly, but will vote for Democrats because of abortion rights, because they might be personally against abortion, but they're like, I don't like this law. This is making healthcare difficult for women. And I think it's important not to underestimate that. I think that's what saved the Democrats in 2020. I think, people just like, these Republicans sound really crazy, and overturning Roe v. Wade is already bad. I'm just going to not say anything and then vote for Joe Biden, right? But who even knows? And also, it doesn't really matter what the most of the American population think. This is what people think in about 5 states. And they're you know.
And also, let's be honest, unless Trump really means he's going to do everything that the Heritage Foundation said in Project 2025, which I don't think he's actually going to do. I take the Benjamin Studebaker view on a lot of this stuff.
Pinay, you don't know GOP women. I'm not talking about hardcore GOP women defecting. I'm talking about middle of the road. I vote for Republicans women. People don't know Republicans. The left don't know
people don't. Most people on the left don't know anyone who isn't in one of 4 major metropoles. Like,
I mean, I know tons of Republicans here, and you know they have like analogous tendencies amongst themselves. You have your like, and a lot of people are just normies. Right, like that they don't think about politics that
that's
much.
The bigger. I think that's the bigger thing. Like when you say GOP women, what you mean is like women in red states who might vote for Republicans locally. You do not mean like activist partisans.
I'm not talking about Phyllis Schlafly. No.
Yeah, are the Mothers for Liberty or any of those loons?
No. Those are ideologically baked in. But just a lot of people just vote Republican in like here in Springfield, they just vote Republican because, you know, that's just what everybody votes for around here.
Well, I mean, here's what it looks like from my standpoint right now. I got nothing on who to call for president, nor do I think elected. I want to say, like, instead of saying why not Trump, saying why do you care? Like, and I know everyone says, oh, it matters on margin. It matters for these programs. I want to be honest with you people on this. Biden actually has proven it kind of doesn't matter on margin and it doesn't matter for these programs. Like, you can only cry. I'm still hearing liberals cry crocodile tears about 2016 and us not voting for Hillary as an excuse for why we didn't get anything we wanted. You can't do that forever. Like, and they're trying to. Like, because they're trying to do that now when a Democrat is in power and came in with a narrow majority in the Senate, but the House. They had the legislature and the executive, and they couldn't even do anything about the judiciary. They didn't even fucking try. So, like, you know, it's amazing to me that people think it's going to matter all that much. I mean, I've gone through, you know, I've been reading the New York Times talk about how, like, Biden had many legislative successes. And I'm like, yeah, you know, normalizing Trump policies. That's most of what he actually succeeded in, with the exception of the Anti-Inflation Act, an act that did nothing about inflation.
I mean, I can say, you know, I'm going to be honest, like, I don't care either. I'm like, it's like,
you can't vote anyway.
I don't get to vote anyway. And even if I could vote, it doesn't really matter here in Missouri. So, like, what's the point? Like, why am I going to invest myself into being upset, really, like, invested in an election where I don't really think it makes that much of a difference, unless you're on the margins, in which case, yeah, I can understand that it makes a difference. But also, like, there's no power to change it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and that kind of absolves you of it as well. It's like, you know, you could write in whoever you want. It doesn't matter in Missouri. But I genuinely, truly feel, and I didn't feel like this in 2016, but like the lesson for me from the Trump era is not that Trump's a dangerous fascist, who's going to, and maybe he'll prove us wrong. Maybe he'll show, maybe either he'll show enough gumption to actually be a fascist and do the work, because you got to do the work if you want to be a fascist, or he's going to be so, like, just pliable that his handlers are going to be able to, you know, impose fascism. But the lesson has been like, he's just going to do petty corruption, do the same shit, just more incompetently and with meaner tweets, as most Republicans would do. And frankly, a lot of the stuff is going to be like the same stuff. So I just can't get so.
And he's actually going to probably slow down the reactionary stuff at the state level, where it's been much more effective, and people have paid attention to it on reproductive rights. And by the way, we all know that the Democrat. I hope all of my audience knows that the Democrats
in Missouri. Yeah, we have Clovis.
Yeah, that the Democrats have no real interest in a national re-legalization of abortion because it would cause them to lose a wedge in red states. It is pretty clear that is their electoral calculus, and it's a perfectly game theoretical one. Now, but I'm going to talk about another one that people aren't paying attention to: labor. Like we are seeing the UAW win gains until this week because the southern states and the Midwestern states are changing their laws even on private sector unionism, and the NCLB isn't doing shit about it. So, because it can't. And like the Democrats aren't really trying to change their state game. If anything, they're backbenches from safe states. They're like, oh, we'll get Gavin Newsom to come up. Like a Californian who's a Democrat has not won the presidency ever. So like, well, maybe not since we've really paid attention to the things. I don't think ever though. Like, and so, and also, do we really want the U.S. to be run like California? Oh my God. You know, California, okay, let's talk about the difference between California and New York. New York has a Fordist core that is just now, under Eric Adams, being dismantled. It even survived the bankruptcy of the city and forced neoliberalization in the 70s. It has a lot of Fordist social goods that are still there. New York has that. California progressivism has never had it at all, ever. And so it's all regulations and weird stunts and cultural politics and mass unemployment for the very poor. Well, not really mass unemployment. I mean, fucking a lot of the unemployed and mass homelessness. A lot of the unemployed in California work. I mean, unemployed, not unemployed. I'm getting my aphasia's kicking in. A lot of the homeless are unhoused in California have fucking jobs. Like, it's that bad. And you're also seeing in California, a lot of the quote middle classes are leaving because they can't afford it. So it's like literally a binary split. Like you're either on the have-nots or you're on the haves. Like, that's an incredibly unattractive way to view progressivism. Yet you see that's where the Democrats are leaning. Like, they're not even going back to their New York. If anything, they want to let New York become more like California, which is like, okay, then there's nothing left. And so my point on this, no matter who wins this election, the U.S. is going to be more right-wing in 2024 than it even is now. Like, I don't care who wins. Like, it's going to happen, but either way, it might be of different levels of severity.
And you know what? One of the things about Trump is like, they'll like try and obstruct him really badly, right? Whereas the Democrats, like, nobody obstructs them. You know what I mean? Like, what was it that Glenn Ford used to say? That the more effective evil. Right?
Yeah. Someone's talking about NIMBYism. We have a housing stock that's really high, guys. We're building housing like crazy here. All right. And yet, I mean, like every sand lot is being turned into condos at the moment.
There's like 3 new houses under construction in my neighborhood, and they're even knocking down old houses and building townhouses in some places. In fact, I think I have to go to a neighborhood meeting to do some NIMBYism because I don't want another townhouse in my goddamn neighborhood. No more students.
The issue
don't live in the halls of residence. It's cheaper. You'll have communal living, and that's what being a student's all about.
But what's happening is, okay, I talked about this with MMT policy once, and I made a lot of people uncomfortable. MMT is actually practiced not as this theoretical left thing that people would hope to implement and imagine in their heads. During the low interest thing, what did that do? It benefited people who had capital to get massive amounts of credit and then play the credit game off of each other. When that reversed and the current high inflation rate, I mean, not high inflation rate, although inflation is part of it, the high interest rate regime that we currently live on, what it's encouraging is these people who have priorly acquired all these rents now have all this liquid cash. You know what they're doing? They're bypassing the rates and just buying property outright. I think 36% or something of houses now are bought like by people with cash, which again, and they're sitting on it. They're not even putting people in that housing stock. So you can build as much as you fucking want. Like, as long as it's an investment mechanism, it's not going to matter. Mm-hmm. Right. And No, it's not techno-neo-feudalism because it's still based on capital. It's still based on capital trade. Like all this is still based on the primary commodities market still functioning. The U.S.
Techno-feudalism would look like Dune. That's what
Yeah.
techno-feudalism would look like. And it would be stagnant because one of the bases of feudalism is stability. And one of the bases of stability is technological stagnation.
Yeah.
So techno-feudalism is not a good...
It's not a good analogy for what's going on. It's
not a good analogy. It's just like hyper-financialization.
Yeah. I mean, like, as I tell people, the whole like techno-neo-feudalism and you're just gonna like sit and like play widgets on a computer. Well, who's gonna make your fucking food?
That's
and
true.
Who's gonna grow your food? Like
that's a good
what
question.
Feudalism's about, man. Like,
but this is a good question. Is Mad Max feudalism? I guess maybe more pastoralism versus feudalism.
Yeah, it's a pastoral versus a feudal society. It's what it is. It's a regression to actually what it really is a regression to antique conditions before manoralism and seniorism separately
have
led
taken
to
root.
Have taken root
What
and led to feudalism.
Fallout? That's a good question. Fallout. I would say that Fallout, you still have state power.
Yeah.
In certain places, you still have state power. So
Fallout's the end of the Roman Empire if you're in the West.
Yeah.
Like,
depends where you are, right? It depends where you are. But yeah, like this whole techno-feudalism is, I think, it's kind of it's a snazzy term, but I think it is a bit misleading because Warhammer 40k is techno-feudalism. Dune is techno-feudalism because they're stagnant and feudal societies.
Yeah.
But it's if anything, the capitalist churn is speeding up, right? Like the AI revolution, like, AI is pretty dumb and it won't be able to do like all the magic that people can do, but they'll be able to do a lot of shit. Like, don't you better believe it's going to still do a lot of shit. And that just is more automation, right?
It's an automated stupid human. Like,
it's automated stupid human. Yeah, exactly.
The one thing I will say about AI is it's proven to me that all of us in aggregate, when we're not trying to act collectively and actively share our thoughts and build on one another, but we're just kind of thrown into a blender, we end up being slightly dumber than any one of us would be. So like, whereas actually when you have to cooperate with each other, the opposite is true. There is a real wisdom to crowds and groups when you're not just aggregating opinion, but people have to build that together, that they tend to be smarter. But when you're and when they have skin in the game, but when you're just like taking everything and putting it in a blender and turning out the mincemeat of ideas, it's going to be shit, man. It's like the worst sausage ever. Like, and it's not really AI. It's something, I mean, anyway, I mean, I don't want to get into debate about what intelligence is because it's not a human intelligence, but we can get into like, is it another kind of intelligence and blah 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 blah, and then all of a sudden like Gene's gonna see me go full Butlerian jihad and be like, I'm gonna smash my computer and then go out and like buy an AMP and just start it. We're going back to the Stone Age. I'm a primitivist now. If you start me on that shit. I'm joking, by the way. I'm not actually a primitivist. Most of you would die. I would probably die. I need some medications in my life. So like, not pro-death. So anyway, we started off with my title, I'm not a nihilist, confused, or leftist or fatalistic. I want people to know that neither Djene or I are actually fatalistic. We're like, you could make good choices. Djene actually argued that earlier. He pushed back against me being shitting on Bernie, and he's right that there was a moment in 2016 where you could pivot. There's a moment now that people could pivot. There really is. The question is, are we going to do it? And the likelihood is almost always no. The most probable answer is no, but it is not the only possible answer. I don't think Djene and I are full Danny Besner where everything's dead no matter what you say. Like, I mean, I love Djene, but he's cheerfully bleak.
He's cheerfully bleak. He's got the cheer of a man who is bleak. because deep down Varn still cares. He still the hope still burns in his heart.
Right.
You know, the hope still burns in his
I
heart.
I still have hope, whereas Besner's just like, it's all fucked. And I'm like, you're so much happier than me because you really believe it's all fucked.
Yeah, he really believes so. I mean, like,
um,
I mean, like deep down, I think I believe it's all fucked. But you know, my thing is like, you never know, right?
yeah.
You know, you never know. You could be surprised. You know what? One of the problems with streaming culture, and I guess this has always been the case, right? Is that, but I think it's intensified by streaming culture, Twitter, all social media, YouTube shows, all these kind of things. There is a kind of tendency for people who engage in this to A, have an opinion on everything, and B, feel like they have to put forward a positive agenda. And sometimes it's okay to say, I don't know, right? Like, I don't know what the way forward is. I don't know what would be best. There are certain things that would be good. Like, you know, and there are certain things I won't criticize people for. Like for example, you know, if your objective is you want student loan forgiveness, you want Medicare for all, and perhaps like a little bit more of a humane foreign policy.
Yeah, I'm not going to shit on you for that, even though I don't think it's socialism.
So, and also, like, just join the Democratic Party. Like, it's a long shot that you're going to have a shot at changing American policy by doing that, but it's probably a better shot than, you know, LARPing sectarian leftist, right?
Yeah. I mean,
You know,
you could be like me, who's a sectarian leftist of one.
aren't we all?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I mean, I think those are your choices, actually. You can either try to do the inside-outside thing, or you can truly be outside. Like, and to be outside, you know, you're basically saying, and I'm not a quietist. I still engage in politics, but I basically have, you know, my stance is my politics are not represented anywhere on the American spectrum of actual viable politics. They're not. They're just not. Like, there's not a party I could join, not a sect I could join. They would actually represent me. And I'm not going to submit myself to party discipline, because I think party discipline is important. If you're going to go into that, you need to be disciplined. Not like the Democrats, because the Democrats are that kind of party, but like, you know, a party that's trying to build from the ground up. You got to be really devoted to that shit. Like,
you can't just treat it like you're swapping streams that you watch, right?
Right.
It's not just a fashion. It's like you have to be dedicated, right? You know, I don't know if the model of a kind of professional revolutionary party is really applicable today, things like that. But in a general sense, the idea of having some kind of party discipline in terms of message and action, it seems to be kind of a central thing, especially when you're a small group trying to make your way in the world and build up a base of support. And of course, that has a does the left project have to be based in electoralism?
No.
I
mean, this is the thing, though. If you're going to play the electoral game, you can do it two ways. You can do what Djene's saying, or you can do it the way that I would do it if we had a party that was a Varn party. We would be a left-wing Tea Party. We would only fuck shit up. Like, that's all we would do. All right.
And this is why I always think the kind of hope that the squad would be a left-wing Tea Party misunderstands the different reasons for the election of the Tea Party and the election of the squad. People voted for the Tea Party because they wanted to fuck shit up, right? People voted for the squad because they both wanted to fuck shit up, but they also had a positive agenda, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, okay, I'm gonna push on you a little bit. Their fuck shit upness and their positive agenda were at odds with each other. Like, going all the way back to the Ackerman plan, like the dirty break.
No, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I agree. I mean, it's like that you had a section of people who were voting for them to fuck things up, but I would say the majority of people, and what they were saying, right? What they were saying was they were pushing their message was a positive agenda, Medicare for all. That was the core of their thing. Their core isn't like cut the government and vague statements. They had like concrete policies that what they wanted to advocate for. And you can't be a Tea Party and advocate for you couldn't be a Tea Party and advocate for like not funding things by withholding your vote, or like, but to completely rebuild the American healthcare system, no, you can't do that by being, an objector to everything, right?
Right. Although, just so people know, historically, Marx was an objector to everything, but like that's what he did. Like that's how they engaged in. Like me and Ben Burgess went at it because I'm like, yeah, the Marx encouraged the SPD to run, but he threatened to anytime the SPD minister took like a cabinet position in the government, he would threaten to quit because he's like, no, you're only here to fuck shit up until we can actually assume power. Like it, electorally, insurrectionarily, whatever.
Ministerialism. Right?
Yeah. It's you fuck shit up until it's so fucked up that you can take it over. Like that's the idea.
And you don't want to be the administrator of the police. It's one thing to do the schools. It's another thing, to do the sewers. It's another thing to be the chief of police.
Right. Or you don't want to have to administer capitalist businesses like California did. Like it's because you're going to be the socialist government that's going to have to crush a union. Or you're going to be the socialist or you're going to be the DSA that has to fire its unionized employees. I mean, like,
which they should never have been unionized in the first place.
Well, I mean, my thought is you shouldn't have that many employees in the first place, but whatever. I remember getting an argument with DSAers about how they had way too much professional staff. Like, I was like, yeah, you need some.
So many people saw this as a bloody NGO, right? Let me tell you a little story, Varn. So, like, in the past, like language matters, right? Like words come in vogue, right? Mm-hmm. And ways of doing things come in vogue, and like NGOism is like how people understand civil society, right? They don't say civil society, say NGOs, right? And I think the existence of this word NGO, there's something very clinical, business-like, very neoliberal about it. There's some intangible aspect to the word NGO, which feels false and inorganic. It feels always like, even if it is a ground-up NGO, it always feels like they're trying to get some, big donor to give them money, right? And that kind of an expression of the degeneration of civil society, the idea that like everything is an NGO. And I think that, and there's a way of doing things in NGOs that is very professional and corporate. It is technocratic, right? And I think that mentality infected the DSA. And why I bring up this word of NGOs, I just remember in Iraq, after the invasion of Iraq, everybody wanted to set up a NGO. They used the word NGO, right? Because that became the paradigm for like understanding how to interact with civil society. And I think that's just very telling. And I think that NGO culture basically screwed up the DSA to an extent, because it's like, oh, you have to be, it's not about being dedicated. We have to have professional technocrats doing the job.
Yeah. So Timothy asked, do you think that student protesters end up running the NGOs? Well, frankly,
that's literally what's going to happen.
I was about to say, I wouldn't say all of them, but like the leaders, particularly the ones at the elite universities where this started, of course, that's what's going to happen. That's what they're training for.
I mean, we literally had a joke about this when I went to the School of Oriental and African Studies in London, University of London. Very like kind of like we don't have like
the Columbia of no, I'm kidding. Actually, kind of.
It's kind of like the Columbia of I mean, because there's no private universities in Britain, right? So like everything.
Yeah, but they're all high endowment, like private universities, though.
They don't even have that big endowments. Like Oxford barely making $1 billion, and think about that. That's crazy if you compared to.
But like the continental universities don't have endowments at all.
They don't have a dime, yeah. But anyway, like at the school, it like had a reputation for being a center of radicalism, right? Like most student unions in Britain, the elections they have is contested by Labour and the Conservatives. Liberal Democrats tend to be overrepresented compared to the puppet. So it was like Islamists versus SWP people. That's the kind of place. But the joke was, School of Oriental African Studies was where colonial officials and MI6 were recruiting for, and B, everyone would have their 3-4 years of radicalism, pack it in, and go get a job at an NGO. Literally.
And then be some functionary and the
Let me tell you,
Liberatory Party.
one of the leaders of the student protest in the Iraq War at School of Oriental and African Studies. What is he now? Senior Al Jazeera journalist, right?
Yeah. I mean, when people ask me why I'm cynical, oh yeah,
Whoa,
people,
the Hezbollah guy ended up working for the police. Maybe he was always working for the police. I don't know.
Yeah, how many of those people in the New Communist movement ended up and the New Communist movement, the Weathermen, etc., ended up either at universities like Bel Air's teaching Barack Obama, or like Gene Kwan, mid-level functionaries in the Democratic Party, are Rob Reich. I can go through the number of former Maoists who were in like the Clinton administration or were California mid-level moderate Democrats by the late 90s. Like, it's a lot. It's a whole lot of people. Like,
yes, there's going to be a proportion of these people. And because what I'm beginning to realize as well is that on one hand, these protests are getting suppressed because I generally think like they're not useful to the Democrats, right?
Right. No, absolutely. It breaks up too many of their coalitions.
But on the flip side, I don't think all these people are going to be persona non grata, because I do think there is a split or emerging split within the, perhaps I don't want to say the Democratic
I think they're
Party,
going to crush a few of them, and then the others are going to be given jobs. Like,
well, I think there's an element of the foreign policy establishment, the blob, and you're seeing this even on the right, with people getting sick of Israel, right? There's just an element that thinks like Israel's just out of control and this is not good for American imperial policy, right? Which is kind of new and unprecedented. And I think that may offer some protection to these people in the long term, because I don't think it's, I think currently it has to be suppressed by the Democratic Party because it's not used to it. But I think, and this is Doug Lane's point, he calls it a factional fight within the Democratic Party. I wouldn't characterize it like that, but I think it's eminently co-optable, or at least elements of this movement is eminently co-optable, because I think there are parts of the U.S. foreign policy establishment and liberal opinion that's like, we want a two-state solution, and it seems to us that actually it's Israel at the moment that is the main obstacle to that.
Right. So if we get a ceasefire, we could like get a Hamas Fatah unity government, and then like we can work with them too and play
sort
both
this
sides
shit
of the
out,
coin.
because they don't want to deal with it anymore, right? I think there are people who are like, this is a big distraction, right? We piss off all the Arab countries that we have good relationships with other guys, and the Arab countries are like, look, we want to work with Israel. We want, but this Netanyahu guy, like, you can't be doing this stuff. You can't be just massacring kids, right? So I think it's I think in the longer term, I think a strain of opinion in these protests is going to be absorbed, because I want to say, like, and I guess I differ from my friend Eskender Sadeghi on this, like, he talks about the Palestine Solidarity Movement as being like an institution of the left, which I think, yes, is true in a formal sense. But I think in these I think there's just a lot of normie people who are just pretty disgusted because, like, our news is not mediated by the establishment press in the way that it was. And we can see what's happening, right? People, like, you can pretend if you read something that that's not happening. But when people are showing you like visceral pictures of like, or immense cruelty, and also you're seeing what the Israeli soldiers are doing because they're broadcasting it on TikTok, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's like, and I think one of the things I think is interesting, Gene, this is also going to hit the right, because there is the congressional right.
It's hitting the right.
Candace Owens, the congressional right is trying to still be the old neoconservatives on this one issue, and they're getting pushback from their base, not just.
Well, what's his name? Massey. What was it? One of the AIPAC was spending Republicans who were being called. I think Thomas Massey is his name, was like complaining about, like, this is the United States, this is not Israel, right?
Right. Oh yeah. Berserker says, Gene, there's a big split in the student movement between more moderate elements that are uni-friendly and the radical wing that's supportive of not cooperating with the union. The problem is, though, is what can the radical ring do as a protest movement about divestments on campuses if they won't cooperate? And the answer is not a lot. And that's, you know,
I mean, these guys are like, what's important, and I think you highlighted it, right? People, like, there's a lot of mischaracterizations of these protest movements, you know, and one of the things I think that maybe in the longer term bodes well for them is the fact that they do, like you say, have very concrete demands, like open the books of these universities, right?
Yep.
Oh,
this is very different than honestly, the BLM demands were a mixture of can't happen under these conditions are really easy to grant. Like, you know, it was actually, that was weird about that. Like, not, and that wasn't true for BLM 1. That was true for after the, you know, the Floyd insurrection, which I'm going to refer to the insurrection because it's more than a riot and less than anything else. But you
don't like rebellion?
Rebellion's probably better because insurrection implies that it worked.
Insurrection also implies that it had a direction.
That's also true. Well, it had a bunch of directions, and the direction is what I normally see with these things. It starts in the industrial heartland and ends in elite university college campus on the coast. Although the thing with the Biden what's called in the Biden Palestine protest, because it's kind of true, is they're moving in the opposite direction. They're starting at elite institutions and moving further and further into less and less elite institutions. But the thing about them is, and they're like, there's both the condemning them as radicals and hateful and all that's bullshit. There's also this like, oh, it's all the students, and it's like 12% of them, and like 50% of the students are like, yeah, we like them as long as they don't like fuck shit up too much. Like,
and I think, you know, there like, it's very telling that the conservatives I know here in town, who usually like super on Israel's side, are like, they seem like they're going too far, right?
Yeah, I mean, even Jesse Single and Katie Helper, two of the most milquetoast like people that I can think of. I'm like, well, we can't praise Israel right now. Like, go ahead.
No. What's the name? I'm just reading the comments. Djene, it's
Helper.
That Nassim guy in a swamp. He blocked me on flippancy grounds. Oh dear.
Not Katie Helper. What's her name? Katie. Fuck, I can't remember.
Katie. Think of all the Katies out there.
There's so many, man. No, because Katie Helper's, unuseful idiots. You know what? I hate that I know this stuff. You know why I know this stuff? So I can communicate with you guys. I would never listen to this shit.
Like, shut up, Varn. You would listen to it because you listen to what's relevant to the left, and as much as everybody likes to say it's not relevant to the left, it is super constitutive.
No, Djene. I listen to what's relevant to the left as long as I'm talking to the left. I wouldn't listen to it on my own. Like,
I mean, of course not. Oh, so okay, fair enough. You're calling these guys. I do
listen to it. I do absolutely. Katie Holmes, thank you. I do absolutely listen to this stuff, and also the centrist, and also whatever the right is saying. I will not degrade myself by fucking caring about what Crowder, Ben Shapiro are.
Yeah, I don't follow that. I see clips on Twitter. That's enough for me. And I don't do the streamers. I'm sorry, I can't sit there and do the streamer stuff. I don't honestly. I just mainly watch rules videos for Warhammer the Old World, and
I watch more content that was relevant to our show, Gaming Materialist, than I do anything.
Yeah, I do. Who you following? There's Discourse has been dropping some bangers recently. I was talking to Discourse yesterday, actually. I was telling to take a look at Danny Bessner's article on the creative industry.
It hurts. God damn it, too many Katies. Go ahead. Danny Bessner's article on the creative industry. Go.
Yeah, and they were saying like you should think about how this is like applies to like how game design has developed in the last 40 years as well, because it's really similar trend.
Go ahead.
So yeah, I mean, like, because what's his name? A lot of the thing is, Varn, when you've been following this stuff for a while, you know, at a point you're like, I kind of don't need to listen to any of it
because you can predict it.
Because you can predict it really easily, and then you look on Twitter and you're like, oh yeah, don't need to say it. I just know what everyone's gonna say, right? It's like super easy.
I haven't
because-
listened to a Brigadier Gray show or a
Yeah, they do.
Sam
You know
Peter
what
show
she's
or
gonna
any of
say?
that shit in a long time.
She's just,
Yeah.
like, honestly, she's just a butthurt. She's just butthurt that she backed the wrong horse and isn't doing what that Haitian origin woman is doing. What's her name? The spokeswoman
No.
for Biden. What's her name? Come on, chat. What's the spokeswoman for Biden?
We're both having senior moments.
The Haitian lady, the Haitian origin lady. Come on, Pierre, something Pierre. Jean-Pierre. There you go. Pierre, there we go. We got it. She's just mad she's not doing that. And so she's competent. She's a real NGO type. She's trained. She's like she's doing so well. Like, one of the reasons she does so well, she's just so much better at doing this than most people who do it, because she's trained for this shit. She was born for this, right?
Who are we talking about? Jean Pierre or
No, Brianna Joy Gray, right?
No, yeah, she's trained as a lawyer. She's
trained as a lawyer. She's she looks good. She talks good. She's smooth. She's not too
She
black.
just had to ease off, a
She's not too
certain
black for the, in the way that she speaks. Because you know how white people are, man. If somebody talks like with a little bit of an African American vernacular, they just don't listen to him. It's like,
That's
I
true.
swear to God, like, one of the things that I've seen in America, I'm like, this is really like, I was like, I just remember someone there's a lady who works in our HR department she does the health insurance thing. And somebody said something really mean. It's like, this woman's like super competent at doing a job. And she just talks with and I'm not talking about like, she's talking like, she's like talks with a slight southern. People were really rude about the way she talked. So that's why I'm mentioning Brianna Joy Gray. She's just well made for media and for the unconscious prejudices of. She did Disappear Virgil, Texas, which is she's so good at it. But politically speaking, I mean, she says she doesn't need to read Marx, right? Because she's just the disgruntled Democrat at the end of the day. And part of her being disgruntled is that, she was kind of like I think there's policy things about, student debt and racial justice issues and things. But also I think she's hurt that she's not on the inside now. Do you get what I mean?
Well, let's look at the declining media industry. Like
David says, wait. David says, Brie can talk like a white girl. There you go.
When you look at this in the broad array of things, how many Ivy League people are now on fucking podcast? Like it's just, people still clamor for the cable news gig. Although I don't know why, because there's like this weird, like, archaic prestige attached to it. That's the only real reason. I guess it pays.
A lot of money attached to it, bro. A lot of money.
There's more money, but yeah, it's annoying, man.
But she's just so much better than everybody in the left podcast sphere. I just want to, I'm not trying to insult, Brianna Joy Gray. I think her politics are incoherent, and
she's more interesting to listen to than Amy Goodman. But like that also.
Amy Goodman's kind of boring, but no, Brianna's like a very good at her job, and things like that. I just wanted to praise her as well. I don't want Jason not to be able to be friends with her anymore because I said something being on a podcast, because people are very petty in the podcast world.
This is a weird thing. Look, I don't get invited to a lot of the bigger podcasts, but I probably insulted all of them at one time or another. But and sometimes I apologize when I go too far, but usually I don't. It's interesting though, right? Like, it's very ego driven until you made it. Like, you can insult Boss Carson Carr as much as you want.
He doesn't care.
He doesn't care anymore because
he's not one of them. And he's not one of these new media guys. He's an old school guy. Like, he's young, but he did it. He did the old school.
Yeah. And he took over an old school institution ultimately.
He's in charge. He's the king of the nation now. So, so he's in legacy media, right? the people who like have professional training do kill it in the podcast. I mean, Sam Cedar is another one, right? I'll still listen to an interview on the Majority Report because Sam Cedar could do a good interview, right? He knows
Yeah.
to ask a question.
He's a slightly funnier version of NPR.
Yeah, he's a slightly funnier version of NPR. He's good. He's like I mean, I don't really listen to the Fun Half much anymore. But like Dave, you still listen to the Majority Report. What's going on in the Majority Report these days? I need to keep my I need to keep my thumb in the game and find out what's going on there.
Yeah, I prefer not to talk about the big parasocial relationships because that just gets everyone yelling at me about the person who they imagine is giving them ASMR at night. You know, like when
That's
they
fair
listen
enough.
to their
That's
lonely
fair.
podcast and then tell me about how it's really liberating their politics or whatever.
Why do I think her politics are incoherent, Jane? I just don't think there's like any like ideological. But I mean, I guess are they incoherent? Maybe they're just kind of like left Democrat politics, and she's cynical. So maybe it is coherent. Maybe I'm just wrong.
Well, I mean, left Democrat politics are not coherent. It's not a coherent milieu. It's not that she's incoherent about it. Like that's how I would actually think about it. But
look at Dave having massive cope in the chat right now. It's not parasocial if you meet them every year. I don't know about that.
Varn, would I go on Vosh? No, I would not. I wouldn't go on Vosh. I wouldn't go on Has. I would like. I go on TIR because Jason's nice to me. Like
you should go. You should totally go on Has. You should totally go on Has. I want to see that. I would watch that. I would watch that.
You know what? I challenge. You know, a scimitar duel would be kind of fun.
BJG says she wants to join PSL. I mean, okay, I'll see it when I believe it. I'll believe it when I see it, right? You know, a lot of people just say a lot of things. Yeah, Brianna's very smart.
PSL's good at recording, good at recruiting media figures into its central committee. Anyway, so
I want Vaughn to die of high blood pressure. Why would I? Yeah, go on Has. Exactly. Everyone thinks you should go on Has. It's like the new Chapo. You'd go on Chapo, Vaughn. Come on. Those guys are nice guys. I mean, I don't listen. I like honestly, Vaughn.
I've listened to 3 Chapo episodes in my life. I'm actually going to be honest about that. I've literally listened to 3.
Okay, beat this. I've listened to clips from Chapo. I've listened to long clips from. I've never listened to a podcast of Chapo.
I do listen to Kush Vlog, and I will occasionally
I've seen the Kush Vlog a couple of times too.
I have listened to clips.
Who's the big Chapo guy?
I think Biederman is funny. I think Chrisman is smart but fatalistic, and he's got some weird blind spots. But I'm a big Chrisman fan, obviously.
He's a very nice and generous guy.
Yeah, he'll talk to people who are not like he's giving of his time. I don't have a lot to say about Amber Lily Frost except she called me a fanatic on Facebook once, and fair enough. I might be a fanatic. What the fuck ever. She got mad at me for being too mean to Jordin or something. I forgot what I said.
Mean to people? Were you mean to Jordin?
I was mean to Jordin.
Saint Jody of the Deanings.
Well, that was back before she got canceled by
her will. Vaughn go on Tim Pool. Do you want Vaughn to start fighting with people like an angry badger? Because that's what he'll do. He'll go full badger on
you guys want me to be like the opposite, like Dark Ben Burgess. So I just go on all the reactionary shows and just fist fight them, and then is that what you want? Wait,
what happens if the Par Wraiths don't support Azov? I mean, the Par Wraiths do support the Azov brigade.
He's fucking with you. He's fucking with you.
The Par Wraiths definitely. Man, I haven't thought about the Par Wraiths for a long time. The true gods of Bajor, we must always remember. And the new Breen Alliance. Breen like they live in a fridge. That's my theory. Anyway, fist fights with Tim Pool. No, I think Varn has a lot of potential to go on podcasts. Like Varn, as as much as he, like as much as you can't tell, he has a big ego, right?
No shit.
He has a big ego, and he's he's got short man syndrome. That's what he's got. He's got short man
I
syndrome.
do believe I'm taller than you.
I didn't say I don't have. I'm just saying, how tall are you, Varn?
I'm 5'8".
I mean, I'm 5'8" too, so you're the same.
So we're
size.
the same size. Okay, we have mutual short man syndrome. All right.
But not every short man has short man syndrome. I'm saying you specifically have short. I'm chill about it because you know what? In the Middle East, I'm average.
Yeah. Well, I was tall in some places.
There you are. When you go to those pygmy tribes in the Congo and Central African Republic, you're like a giant.
Oh man, yeah.
Hanging out with malnourished children. It's like, yeah, I'm a super Chad. But do you both have bald? No, I'm not going bald. My brother's going bald, and he's really up. He was upset about it, I think, for a while.
No, my hairline's been this high since I was like.
Yeah, that's the same
13.
with me. Going on Has would not be productive. It probably wouldn't be productive because I think out of all those weirdos, Has is a smart one. I think he's not stupid. I think he's doing it. I think he believes a bit of it, but I think he's doing he's doing the left cult thing online. He's doing like tanky Hassan Abi, right?
I supposedly, and this is apocryphal, I do not know this, but supposedly some of Haz's affectations come from jokes I made 10 years ago. So apparently he knows who I am.
So did you groom Has?
If I did, I'm real sorry, guys. If I accidentally somehow planted the seeds for that, yeah, I'm gonna go to Naraka for a long time. Varn, what do you think of the reaction to Tut going on Has? Well, I think if people listen to what Tut said, he didn't say anything reactionary. He just didn't. I don't know if it helped or hurt. I have no idea. I'll tell you about this. I talked to him about it before he did it, and I said it all depends on what you say when you go on, and it all depends on if you lose your cool. Because if you lose your cool, I would lose my cool. You're gonna play into a game, and it's gonna do exactly what it'll create good streaming television, whatever, but it'll it actually help House's politics. But if you can talk to him sincerely and then get him to make concessions sincerely, and I think Tut got a few, not a lot, but it might be worth doing for his audience, not for Daniel's. So but I personally am too hot-headed for that. I know my own weaknesses. Gene's right. I have short man, working class, failed academic syndrome. I have to be smarter than you and meaner than you. Those are two necessities.
He's got a lot of rage in him.
Yeah. Well, Bordigis with sympathies towards Bukhara, and I don't know who else was one of those. Anyway, I think Tut looked like a fool because he conceded too much. Yeah, it's a delicate. I'm not here to say I thought it went better than I expected. I'll be quite honest, because when Ben Burgess went on it just became a
shouting match.
It just became a shouting match. It's
you see,
most of the big streamers are short. Yeah, that's probably
Jason
true.
Miles would not do well there because Jason would be like, "Give me your address. I'm coming around right now. Let's sort this out, mano to mano." He'd be worse than you because he's a calm guy. But then if you want to fight, he's like, no, we're gonna fight. Give me your address and I'm coming. Let's see, talk that to my face. But yeah,
Daniel said he hurt him because he insulted Lukash. Oh, that's okay. I mean, I've insulted Lukash. So anyway.
But I don't have problem. I mean, the problem with engaging with these guys is always it's just kind of like a performance game, right? It's not actually about trying to understand or discuss something. It's not actually about trying to get to like, hey, do we have common ground? It's about who's going to own who. And that's like what a lot of the debate culture, even the politics debate, is just a form of like it just
It's
feels like
intellectual wrestling for nerds.
it's like yeah, it is. It's like you might as well listen to like it's like rap beef. I'm more into rap beef now than all this beef, to be honest, because I just find the whole 50. Everyone's talking about Kendrick Lamar and Drake, but like the one that I'm following is 50 Cent and Diddy.
No, I saw that shit. That was pretty funny.
50 Cent has been, but like this is what a lot of the streamer shit turns into. It's kind of rap beef.
Except that occasionally rap beefs will kill each other. Rap beefers will kill each other.
That's true.
Like I've never known of leftists actually, like not since the Soviets have they actually done anything.
Yeah, they're not going to do anything. Streamers aren't going to do anything.
No, they're not even like the old Maoist cults of where they would just kill like themselves. Like it's not even that. Like, not that I want anyone to die, but like, I mean, if we're gonna go all full,
it's a simulacrum of politics.
If we're gonna go full all network on everything, then we might as well go like full network on everything and like have fake terrorist bombings and shit. I don't know.
I mean, honestly, a lot of it feels like, and I guess we're engaging in it too, Varn, because we come on the internet and yell at people.
Oh no, yeah.
But like a lot of it feels like, this has become a substitute for politics, for doing politics. It's like, a lot of people who say that they're political, when I run into them, they just mean that they listen to political podcasts, that they don't actually do anything political. It's like there's no follow up to it. So it's like, it's like they're addicted to pornography and then going around saying, I'm just a sex expert. It's like it's really unhealthy what you're doing to both the people participating in producing it and the people watching it.
Right. No, I agree with that. Like the thing is, like, if this ever became my full-time job, I would have a problem. I see what it does to people. Like they get like, the thing is, if you LARP this as politics enough, you start believing it's politics, and all of a sudden you're going on Twitter saying, I'm not participating in the culture war, but I'm literally going to comment on every fucking stupid culture war thing that possibly comes up on Twitter, because it's also going to increase my clicks and views, which clearly I don't give a fuck about. See what I name my episodes. Like I've actually gotten anti-SEO on shit lately. Just been like, I'm going to name it something impossible. But I guess this one's a little bit more clickbaity than normal, but still.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you see, it's like very telling about what videos do well and what videos don't do well. It's just telling what people want to listen to and what people want to watch.
Yeah. Why I quit the left as a leftist who left the left, lefty left, but also not. Or those other guys suck. And
well, I have my new friend who has like set up an account explicitly to troll me, and I want to give him a shout out. Like my new reply guy, I believe the term is. I don't know. Is it a anon created just to troll you? Is that a reply guy?
Yeah, I guess. So
that big achievement in my podcasting career, what is remarkable about it, it's like it's so angry at me, Varn, so angry at me. It's like, why are you so angry? Why are you angry? What did I do? Am I a hater, Varn?
I mean, you are a hater, but maybe they think you secretly work for the FS. Well, no, not the MI6. I don't know.
Let's use AI to make thumbnails like Mr. Beast. The ICC needs to look into Mr. Beast, because what that guy is like, that guy is up to something.
Every time you say the ICC, I have to remind myself you're referring to the International Criminal Court, not the International Communist Current. See how much of a fucking nerd I am.
I hate the way people argue on Twitter. One thing on Twitter, I'm usually really, really polite to people on Twitter, and then I get accused of being passive aggressive.
Yeah, there's no winning. Like,
there's no winning, because a lot of this is just about posturing and claiming you own somebody, right? Gene, you don't understand. Barristers dump a lot of guys. That's true. It's a discourse all about owning people and then proving how not angry and butthurt you are by saying the other person is angry and butthurt. I see it so often. It's like, you just mad. It's like sometimes you just get.
See, that's why I
mad.
just embrace rage sincerely. I am always angry and butthurt. Like you just.
No, I just
assume
get
that
like
it's
I
true.
just get confused because I'm like, is you claiming that I'm angry? Does that mean you're angry? Why would you be angry? Right?
I'm always.
Why would
angry.
anyone be angry? All debates need to be. No, Twitter has proven that Twitter is non-stop posturing. Yeah, it is non-stop posturing. Like people should be funny on Twitter, right?
I do miss when Twitter was funny, actually, and it hasn't been funny and intentionally in a long time. Like, don't blame Elon Musk; it was shitty before that. Like,
yeah, Elon Musk just made Twitter like more difficult to use.
Yeah, it's now just hard. Like,
it's like, come on. I mean, the only reason I'm still on there is because it's just absolutely hilarious. It's like just crazy shit going on there. Like Mr. Beast locking 2 people in a room for 100 days and telling them that they'll get $500,000 between them, right? If they stay in for 100 days. But then there's all these challenges which lead to you like losing money. So you have a DVD, you have to pay $10,000 from your. And then at the end, they have a challenge where it's like, okay, if you can't see each other, but if you press the red button and the other person presses the green button, the person with the red button gets all the money. If you both press the green, you split the money, and if you both press the red, you lose all the money.
Yeah, prisoner's dilemma. He literally prisoner's dilemma them. Yeah,
he's like, it's like the biggest guy on YouTube is fucking Jigsaw. It's like, what the hell is going on?
Oh man, this is what happens when people who grew up on Saw movies make millions off of street. It's either that or Destiny, which, like, you know, god damn, that makes me just want to get addicted to narcotics. Nonetheless, actually I don't want that. I just talked about the benefits of being clean yesterday.
Don't get on the booze wagon, Ron.
The booze, that's a big killer of leftists, is heavy drinking. Like,
heavy drinking. I keep my drinking. I occasionally indulge in a beer. I find a beer to be tasty and nice. Sarah occasionally enjoys a glass. No, she enjoys a glass of wine.
Haram.
It's haram. It may be haram. It may be the haraminist of all things.
Wine. You know what? You know what the grossest wine is in the world?
Mad Dog 2020.
Okay, that actually is the grossest. You know what the second grossest wine is in the world? Have you ever had Omar Khayyam, the Egyptian wine? Oh my god, it's foul.
They used to have this wine in Turkey that they sold in 2-liter bottles, right? Like 2-liter bottles of wine. And they had a word for it in Turkish. It was called something Karapapaz, like the black priest or something. But they called it Köpek Öldüren, like dog killer, because it was like some bad wine. And there used to be a white wine in Britain they used to sell called Blue Nun, which was terrible. It was like the terriblest wine. Anybody in the chat who's ever been to Britain, never drink Blue Nun wine. It was the worst.
Oh,
Destiny
man.
just talks the fake therapist about dysfunctional poly. What? I mean, Destiny. Like, I saw a video of Destiny talking to a serious journalist about Palestine, like next to Ryan Grimm and that Polish American lady who's his opposite number on Breaking Points, right? And I'm just sitting there, and it's like, are people really inviting this guy on to be like a guy who's going to be like talking about Israel Palestine, like this streamer guy
learned about it from like bad rundowns of Wikipedia and like listening to Alan Dershowitz speeches on YouTube.
Like, I don't know how he's done it, but I'm just like, what? Why is he there?
But then again, like, why is Tucker Carlson regularly going on fucking Alex Jones? We're in hell world. We're in fucking hell world.
We really are in hell world, Varn. It's like it's like the barbarism, man. It's
all
like,
barbarism. It's all barbarism. It's always been barbarism. Always will be barbarism. Like,
no, but the thing is, man, it's like it's all the dystopias in one, right?
it's a very shitty dystopia.
It's like a really shitty dystopia. It's like, you know what it's like? What's the one with Sylvester Stallone and Sandra Bullock in it?
Oh God.
What's that one called?
Demolition Man. It is a lot like that, except we don't have the shells. But
It's like Demolition Man, right? You've got Demolition Man, you've got 1984, you got The Hunger Games, you got Mr. Beast doing jigsaw stuff on the YouTube, locking people in rooms, and it's like, what else? It's 1984 because everyone's in polycules, but the reason they're all in polycules is because they can't afford housing by themselves.
Well, that's more Brave New World. I mean, 1984 sex is illegal, but that's true too because we have the Socialist Anti-Sex League as well. So like
Brave New World. Sorry, Brave New World. We're in Brave New World. I always mix up Brave New World and they've got humans on reservations like in Brave New World. It's just very, and then it's cyberpunk as well, except there's like it's a lot less neon and a lot more people just looking at their mobile phones all the time.
Yeah, so it's like a cyberpunk without all the action. It's more just this.
It's like what cyberpunk would really. It's like cyberpunk wouldn't be all cool people hacking the net. It's just a bunch of nerds yelling at each other on forums.
Yeah, I was about to say William Gibson was too optimistic about what we do with all this power, which is like not cool hacking. It is like no, we're gonna replicate high school classrooms forever.
Yeah, it's like people just posting pictures of each other. It's like the stuff that gets popular. It's like it's really is hell world because, like, for example, you have a whole genre of people who cook terrible looking meals. It's like I'm gonna make mac and cheese, but I'm using a pillow, right? And people and like the entire point of the video is to get people to yell at the person because they cooked the food in a very stupid way. Like, think about that.
Well, I mean, it's also, I mean, but it works because Jason Miles is a whole after show just of that kind of content now. Like,
and then you have, what's his name? You have mediocre, like, look, I'm sick of this Taylor Swift lady, right? This Taylor Swift lady is a terrible lady and she has a terrible, like, I'm sure personally speaking, she is a nice lady, but in terms of like, what she represents in culture, she is Eminem for white women, right? That's what she is.
She's Eminem for white women, and
she's terrible. She's terrible.
And Joe Rogan is Oprah for white men, and I am. I have no idea. Actually, I'm a person who yells at people, but not even for a living, man. I mean, like it, you know.
You yell at people for you're like a busker. You like yell at people and like have
I'm like a busker. Like throw me a dime, but pure.
Don't tell me Taylor is all right.
Varn is Oprah for ugly men. Well, okay, guys, if that's what you want,
that is brutal. But they're like owning themselves.
I know. It's like man, I didn't realize that my audience was that depressed. So.
No, look, Swift. Someone's in the chat said Swift is shit, but there are way worse pop people. That's my anti-imperialism argument, right? Swift is shit. There are people worse than Taylor Swift, but Taylor Swift is bad because she's so ubiquitous. That's what makes her the worst. She's just everywhere, right? She's like the American Empire, getting her mediocre. Like I can't even like physically remember a Taylor Swift song because my brain won't accept it. I won't accept that white woman caterwauling at me with her mediocre voice and her pathetic shoot myself lyrics. Right?
You know when you're probably an evil force in culture when high schools are trying to be hip by offering courses in your lyrics.
High schools, like freaking, there's like 2-3 courses at Harvard on Taylor Swift. Swift is like what Drake did to rap. Yeah. Drake was always terrible, and also he's from Toronto. I'm sorry. Anyone who has like subject of Her Majesty the Queen on their passport can't be straight. I'm sorry.
Didn't he start on Degrassi or something?
Okay, Eminem is a great rapper. Okay, I guess so. The first couple of ones were okay, but there's no. Maybe I'm insulting Eminem.
I mean, you are, but still.
Sean Fandango, who's that?
He's a music critic, Gene. He's like he's a guy who likes to look like, imagine me, but like 10 to 15 years younger, and like svelte, but with a similar jawline, and he's just really snarky about music, because I was doing that in my 20s, but in written form. He's a bald young, well, to me he's young. Anthony Fontano, yeah. I don't know, man. We've gotten into culture, and
Culture Wars it's always a good way to wind down, rather than
Culture
ending
Wars.
like last time we started with culture. And
we ended with everything was everything was bad.
Everything was bad, but this time we began with everything is bad, but ended with culture.
Yeah,
but also ended with how everything is bad in culture. But Danny Bessner laid it out in that article, like real good. If you read Danny Bessner's article in Harper's Magazine, Life and Death in Hollywood, or Death of, I forget what it's called. It's Danny Bessner thing. He laid out why we live in a cultural wasteland, and I feel totally vindicated about my opinions expressed last time. We do live in a goddamn IP farm. They are doing that to us, right? They're doing it to us, Varn. And people can go, there's great stuff you can find if you look for it. It's like, well, that's always been true, right? But come on, like, I don't have time to look for things. I have like 2 kids and a job, right? I like, what time do you think I have to go look for like culture? I need it like readily available, and what they have readily available, Varn, is not that good. So I'm gonna go. It hasn't
been that good since the 70s, though.
I mean,
I
no,
guess the 90s was actually not too bad.
No, what's the name? Bessner's argument makes the point that in the 80s and 90s, you got like a lot of hot money.
Yeah, that's true. That's absolutely true.
Film industry, and people were like doing all kinds of experimentations and shit like that, and it was like they were slaying it. And then in the early 2000s, and I'm just talking about television here, right? I'm just talking about television here. In the early 2000s and like in the early days of streaming, you had like some good TV coming out, but now it's all going to crap.
No, yeah, like we lived in the golden age of television when it first started streaming, but it's been shit for a while, and
you're right. And this has been replicated. Like, this is what my big complaint about Warhammer 40K is that they won't innovate on their goddamn rule set, right? They won't properly innovate on their rule set because they don't want to disturb this customer base, right? That they don't want to take a risk. It's like look at, like, honestly, if you look at Dungeons and Dragons books, Ron, tell me, if they replaced the artists with AI art, would you really notice?
Because the house style, it's like Disney directors. The house style is so ubiquitous. Like, they released Planescapes, Gene. I have it back there, by the way. It's one of the last things about, because I love Planescapes, and it hurt me because it looks like every other generic fucking thing that Wizards produces. It might as well have been done by like an AI bot just running all the past Wizards books and spitting out gobbledygook.
Right? And it feels like it's written by AI too.
Absolutely.
Like it's like they just don't write a good book anymore. People can't write a good book. People don't look. And in the past, people used to write rule sets in a really bad and confusing way, but at least a goddamn human wrote it.
Yeah, and also the art was weird, but kind of cool.
Kind of cool. It was kind of cool. But like now it's all just looks like they sell art books of this shit. And I'm like, this is terrible. This is some terrible art. Like proficiency, I couldn't do it. But like aesthetically speaking, it is lift music of fantasy art. There's just no character to it.
Like I'm looking at the original Fiend Folio, the old Game Workshop one that was produced for D&D, and that art's got tons of character. And I'm looking at the Vecna book that came out.
Big snooze.
It is that art. Like, how do you make Vecna artistically boring?
Yeah, they just
fucking
ruin it.
How do you ruin that? Anyway,
Ooh. 13 Days and Shadow of the Weird Wizard was so much better. Both so much better than lots of things.
Yeah, because we're old dudes
like,
who's just
old
telling
dudes
you that all
being
stuff that sucks
it all
now.
just sucks now. Yeah, it all just sucks now. You know how I know it's not just me being old though? You know, like I was like, you know, maybe everything sucks. You know, for a while I was like, maybe I just think everything sucks because I'm getting old. You know, like that's fine.
Yes, Vecna from Stranger Things, but Vecna's one of the oldest characters indeed. You're gonna really expose me for the kind of nerd I am?
Come on, Vecna's the OG lich.
Yeah.
So no, but like, you know how I know? My students tell me, right? And they all listen to Kate Bush, right?
Yeah,
like,
right. And they all listen like everyone.
They're all just like creaming their pants about 90s anime, and it's like, yeah, 90s anime was like real good. It was like a good time to get into anime. And like even with gaming, people are like going mad for Mass Effect, right? That's like a 15-year-old game now, right?
Yeah, it does seem like gaming peaked around 2006.
No, gaming peaked in the 2010s, I'd say. 2010s.
Okay, probably. You think it's around like Skyrim? I don't know. I quit playing games around 2004, so I put it 2 years after I stopped. So
no, no, there's still some good, but people are playing old games, right? People are playing old games and just replay those because new games, a lot of them suck.
I mean, like I have nostalgia for like Mega Man, but those games actually do suck because they're fucking impossible. Like they're just basically quarters.
They just ship out games and they're not ready, right? Like they don't work properly, and then they're like, "Oh,
you have to buy
we'll fix it in post," and it's like, you can't just sell me a $40 game and say I'll fix it in 6 months. I'm serious. That's bonkers, right? So it is like video games are going down the tubes. The RPG industry and war games. I mean, there's innovation, right? Like with the RPG stuff, I know where to get good stuff now. Like me and Varn both got our Mothership boxes, right? We're on that Kickstarter.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's nice. The art is cool. The way that it's laid out is cool. It's just innovative and good. Warlord games, they released the best game rules. King's War, there's innovation on the side. But the behemoths that everybody knows, the things that dominate the scene, suck.
Yeah,
and
no, I mean,
competition to them. There's
you can actually watch 5e get shittier and shittier. Actually, like it's just like you can watch D&D 5e. It starts out okay, and it just goes. Because you defended 5e to me for a long time.
5e's a perfectly fine rule set, but you know how rule sets go. They're never static. They evolve over time, and you get rule bloat, right?
And now that's only gonna get worse because they're trying to say that they're never gonna make an edition that like resets everything. And I'm like, okay, good luck.
The problem with D&D is like, you know, there's some things in their rule set that I would probably change, but I think it's like a relatively simple system. But what it's done is all this like, I don't know, like back in the day, it's like, look, do you want to be an elf, a dwarf, a fighter, a thief? Like what else was there? A warrior, cleric. You know, you had your classes, and now it's like I want to be. Everybody wants to play like a turtle person or a furry. I'm like, I'm sorry, there's no furries in my damn fantasy world. They were all killed, right? Or like, it's like all about like really weird things. Like I find it especially weird in role play games because it's like this is a role play game. It's basically a collective storytelling vehicle. It's not a war game. Like because. And maybe that's just me because I'm a war gamer and a role play guy. Because like
this is why I prefer White Wolf to D&D. Because if I want to play war games, I play Warhammer. Like that's my like Matt Colville. I actually really respect him as a game designer, right? But like, man, we are off topic. But
Matt Colville's very war game like,
but it's very because he comes out of that fourth ed mentality where I mean fourth ed was they were trying to design it to be a fucking video game. Like
I think though if you played with Matt Colville, you would like playing like that. But that's because Matt Colville is like an
he's
OG
like the master
DGM.
of that form. And he's like the master of that form.
That's a hard form to do. It's a hard form to do. It's hard to run a war game / role play game. But when you do it, and I've played in games where it's been done right, it's a great game. The problem is it requires someone who's both good at doing the war game part and also is imaginative and can tell a story.
Yeah, I like Covell. The other thing that's interesting now is we're getting all these D&D clones it's coming out because of the rule set stuff. And I'm just like
about Paradox games.
Man, I don't play computer games like at all. So like
you need to get Capital Volume 1 the simulator. aka Victoria 3.
Yeah, that's a Victoria 3.
The next update is going to be where they're going to introduce, like, you can buy other production centers in other countries like directly now. So it's basically the Lenin expansion.
Yeah. The OGL created D&D clones and threatened the death of the OGL created more D&D clones. It's like D&D clones all the way down. Although some like my favorite gaming systems tend to be D&D clones that go in different directions, like Mort Board. I actually am really excited about Dolmenwood, so that there's actually something to do with
people need to make good modules. There's a lot of good modules. There's a lot of game systems out there, but the lack of one of the good things about D&D was like having a common rule set but obviously D&D kind of shot itself in the butt with the way that they behaved with the OGL and the licensing. So now it can't function as the default rules where we need good adventures.
How are you both? Oh yeah, I've been I guess both big nerds and not virgins. Well, we're 40 something.
I have 2 kids.
Yeah, and I have been married multiple times. So how do you guys have time to get? We don't actually. This is the thing. Neither one of us game a lot anymore. We don't. I actually like. I'm more of a game collector and reader now than I am a player, which is kind of sad.
We should call up Discourse and get the old mothership party back together.
Yeah.
It was a good game. That was a fun game. Varn played Varn in space.
I did. You know what I did? And I fucked shit up. That's what I did.
You angry badgered. Nobody has time to play games. One of the things, actually, David Russell is correct about that. There has been discussion in the gaming industry that people are playing fewer games now, but they're accounting for that decline with the rise of
cell phone games or TikTok. Yeah. TikTok. So maybe big D&D is behind the TikTok ban.
Maybe it could be big D&D. It could be big video game companies.
Yeah, it's Hasbro teaming up with Microsoft to kill the distraction. So to set it. We should do a Balenio TTRPG. Okay. Like I should do a Burroughs TTRPG too. No one will play it. Just have like millipede people everywhere.
I want to do the Mothership roleplay game, but for like Warhammer 40,000 style universes, like the generic cheap game that you can play,
as opposed to the other knockoffs of Warhammer Fantasy, like
Warhammer 40,000. Like,
oh, okay. I have that rule set for tabletop, and it's not great.
There's 2 rule sets now. They had one that they brought out, the Warhammer 40,000 roleplay game, and then they brought out a new one, which I got a copy of, which is basically the old game, the old Warhammer 40,000 roleplay game that was done by Black Industries, and then later on by
Rogue Trader one.
Yeah, they brought. And instead of making tons of different rule books, they just made like one kind of main rule book, and they'll have expansions for it. So yeah, they brought that one back. But no, what I'm talking about is a set that's simple, like a Mothership, but designed to be implemented with a Warhammer 40,000 style universe.
Oh, so Mothership, but
Warhammer.
Grimdark.
Grimdark Mothership, yeah. Something like that. You know, where you have your rules for your space elves and your space dwarves and your space demons and your not space marines. You know.
Yeah, fuck the Smurfs.
We call them terror legions. That's what I like. I like terror legions.
Oh, right. Well, at least we're ending on
a happy note.
On a happy note, which is complaining about the game industry. Well, you know that we for those of you who didn't pay attention, we used to do a whole show on this. Like that's all we did was talk nerd shit.
It was good.
It was a good show. We kind of read. The thing is, all the air got sucked out of the room by controversies around D&D bullshit. So like, it was like I just don't want to complain about the OGL anymore. Like I just, you know, So, Mothership is fun, and the box is cool. I endorse it. And what else has been good lately? I have too many fucking roleplay. The Dark Souls game sucks.
Wow, that was predictable. I don't believe in IP for roleplay games. I think IP should be minimized in roleplay games. I think you should have a roleplay rule set, maybe some modules and stuff like that. Everything should be like GURPS.
Yeah. Also, the Dune game kind of blows, and that's even by good company.
The Dune game is just like it's so unwieldy. I was like, how will people play this? It's like, how do you play this game? This is like this is way too much paperwork. Like way too much. It's like this is what annoys me with a lot. It's like why is so much fucking paperwork? Who's playing with all this paperwork? Like character sheet. Maybe you draw a picture of your character or something. But like, sorry, I don't want to have like as a player.
Does it just remind you too much of your day job, Gene?
It does remind me of my day job. All I do is send emails, like, and receive emails and print things out. I don't want to do that in my spare time. Like I have to fill in so many forms. It's like I don't even know if I teach anymore. Like I swear to God, it's like all my time goes into administration.
That's actually kind of true for me too. Actually, I still teach.
It's like how much time am I? It's like I'll spend I'll spend a day preparing my lectures for the week, but then I'll spend like the whole week doing everything that's not to do with teaching directly.
Yeah. And to answer the question about how you got into nerd shit and yet also got laid, I was a vampire player, which had women in it. So like,
well, in my hometown, there was like no social stigma with playing Warhammer or playing roleplay games. It was like,
no, there wasn't really here either.
It was like it wasn't even like oh, you nerd, you play that game. It was like just none of it. There was none of this jock nerd divide. Like at least at my school, there wasn't any of that divide. Like I used to play on the rugby team, and then
I was a wrestler too. So yeah,
I played on the rugby team, and I played roleplay games at lunchtime, and it was like nobody cared. Nobody was made fun of you. Nope. Everybody, even the coolest kids in the school, would have a Games Workshop phase where they'd get a couple of miniatures, but they would go off it maybe. But there was just
I should actually think about that. I feel like that's a stereotype from the fucking 80s even.
Yeah, it just feels like it just wasn't applicable, right? Yeah. Like the only place that nerd stigma existed when I was growing up was in TV shows. There was stigma against quote unquote nerds, as in people who were socially awkward, but nobody was like, "Oh, you're a nerd. You play roleplay games. That's so nerdy." Like nobody would say that, right?
No, a lot of them would play with you. Like it was, and it was something to do, like we would play, Mage the Ascension, like on the wrestling bus.
Yeah,
you know,
nobody we'd play freaking Game Boy together. Everybody would play Game Boy. Actually, I'll tell you one thing. in the mornings, like before class began, like the people I used to play D&D with, right? In the mornings, they'd be all playing cards with the quote unquote jocks, like the people who played rugby. They'd be playing cards for pennies in the morning, like gambling.
I highly doubt you would have shoved me into a locker in high school. I'm just like I really doubt it.
People, it's not saying like people didn't get bullied or people weren't picked on and stuff, but it was just there was never this whole like there was never like an activity that the people who do that activity suck. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think that's just that was just something that existed in movies for me. That was the only place that existed.
The one person who bullied me in high school got their ribs broken. So
the one person who tried to bully me in high school, right? And he was 2 years above me at school. He was like, I think he was in year 9 and I was in year 7. And he like made fun of me and I can't remember what, but I was like real strong, right? And I just rugby tackled his 6-foot ass to the floor and stood on his balls. And I didn't crush down on him. He's like, okay, I was only joking, right? And I swear that guy now, right? He owns, like, I still know him, right? He owns the strip club in my hometown. He looks like a gammon, right? He looks like a big shaved. He's a good guy. That guy played Blood Bowl, still plays Blood Bowl. He used to try and bully me in the freaking Games Workshop, right? And that guy never got to bully me back. I remember he's like, everyone was making fun of us, like, she beat you up in high school. What are you going to do about it? And he got me back, but he got me back by putting his penis on my head. And
that would do it, yeah.
While I was asleep. And I was like, I guess that's getting me back. I think he squeezed a genital wart pus on me or something. That's what they told me anyway when I woke up.
Wow.
Yeah. That's how we used to roll in the early 2000s. And now he's a respectable businessman.
I mean, in so much that anything in England is a respectable business. But
he owns the only strip club in town. The last one.
You know, it's an honest. It's an honest.
And if I remember correctly, the way that he drove the other, you'll appreciate this. The way he drove the other strip clubs out of business. You know how he did it?
How's that?
He basically gave the strippers like a way better deal. So they all quit the other clubs and came and work at his club. And then when the other ones closed down, he fired them.
Oh man.
Upstanding citizen. This reminds me of Doug Lane Catron conversations about gay being straight. How gay being straight is. That's just Catron's propaganda right there. He's grooming you. He's grooming Doug on camera. That's what's happening.
Oh, I'm not touching any of that. You know, if we go long enough,
Van's ex-husband is his new man. Is like Van's glad that he's out that relationship and that Doug's moved on and found a new friend, a new heterosexual life partner.
Yeah,
Catron is your replacement.
He's
your replacement.
And you know what? That's okay. And I'm not going to talk about why that's okay because we're on air and I won't do that. But
Catron is not sinister at all. He's actually a really nice guy.
No. This is one of the funny things about Catron.
He's a super nice guy. Nice guy.
He is one of the nicer people. Like
one of the nicest leftists I've interacted with. A real nice guy, real funny, real like. He's a good sport. He doesn't get mad at people, and people are real mean about him. I mean, he says some stuff which I think is like, I'm like, dude, why are you saying that? Right? Like, he likes to troll, but he's a nice person. Like, and people get really mad at him. It's like, that's on you. If you get mad at Chris Catron, it's like, he's won.
Yeah, that's what he wants from you, honestly. Like he's baiting you to get mad at him. I did a like 5-hour interview with him once with a former colleague of mine, and she really wanted to nail him down, and I was like, don't do it, don't. And every time she would try, you could see his eyes like light up. It was just like,
He's ready for it.
it's just like, this is what I wanted.
It's like, yeah, that's right. It's like he's gonna actually. That's like Catrone's thing. Is like he actually's the people. He's like, actually, you know,
people are missing the old Doug and well, the thing is as Doug's heterosexual life partner.
Like Catrone would love it if he knew people thought he was like Palpatine.
Oh,
like
man.
He's got all the action figures. He's got the Senate play set. I didn't even know this exists.
Oh, by the way, if you want to know a nerd, like,
so wait, we got someone here. I watch both Hassen and Varn.
Oh, I can see. Told you they existed.
That is an overlap I was not expecting. I want to hear more about that, chat. I want to hear. Definitely want to hear more about that. But yeah, Catrone is he's a nice guy. Like, people hate on Catrone, but like, I feel I kind of know Catrone personally. And
ironically, I don't. So like, I just know he's pleasant.
We chat. He's very pleasant. He's a very pleasant person, and he's right a lot of the time. He's often insufferable about being right, and he often goes way too far with his points and is needlessly provocative, and sometimes kind of sounds pretty, ignorant. But in general, he's pretty good. Like, I don't know, like some of his Israel Palestine stuff, I just don't listen to it. I was like, I don't want to hear Doug Lane and Chris Catrone yammering on about Israel Palestine. I'm not here for that. Oh, someone else watches Ludwig Lindstrom. He watches Varn and Hass. That sounds from what I know of Ludwig, that sounds on brand for him. He's always accusing me of being like, oh, you just believe the imperialist lies too much. I'm like, sometimes the imperialists aren't lying to you. The key is not.
Yeah, this is the thing.
This is the key. You got to find out why they're telling you the truth. That's more suspicious, actually. When they're lying, it's like, yeah, they're lying. It's just lying. But wait. Why all of a sudden are they telling us the truth? I always, like, whenever they start telling the truth about something, it's like when they started telling the truth about the Saddam Hussein regime, you're like, oh man, this fucking war's really going to happen. Right.
Yeah. That's the thing. And like,
it's like, because they weren't telling the truth about Saddam Hussein for a long time, but then boom, suddenly it's like, that's kind of interesting that you've suddenly discovered this, like, this kind of truth. It's very convenient, isn't it? Yeah. That's what the crude anti-imperialists don't understand. It's like, it's not the lies that'll get you, it's the truth.
Yeah, I was about to say, your enemies also have a good reason to tell. This is just like a rule for life. Your enemies actually have good reasons to tell you the truth, like, because that's gonna actually damage you. But yeah, we're the interesting American Marxist left. Oh, well, that's depressing.
Has doesn't seem like a pleasant person. Yeah, I mean,
I have no idea.
He seems like I don't know. He seems like a bit weird, but I mean, to each their own.
I didn't want to seem like a pleasant person either, so I get it. Like, it's years of cultivating being this much of an asshole.
Oh yeah, here's a good one. They just dropped an article in the Atlantic about the deep Saudi involvement in 9/11. You see, that's it. Why are they telling you the truth right now? What the hell is going on? I'm like, that. Honest to God, like, maybe I'm having an epiphany, but I think that's what it comes down to. It's like, I always get more paranoid and suspicious when
they're telling us the truth.
When they're telling us the truth, because that's the scare. Because I guess I assume the default to. Maybe I believe that they lie all the time. I just get terrified when they're telling us the truth.
Absolutely. All right. On that note, and that's a good note. When powers that be tell you true things, run for the fucking hills because they got an agenda. The hour of Minerva shits on us all. Correct. Thank you guys for listening. We've been through a whole lot tonight. I'm about to pass out. I've had 2 very late nights. You enjoy these streams. They happen probably quarterly. You got 2 in a row. You're probably not gonna get them until like fucking August or something.
I'm always game for a Varn rant.
Yeah. Well, Gene and I are actually friends, so
I'm Varn's therapist.
You are. You're always talking. You're actually, for those of you who don't know, if you think I talk shit on air, like G's always like, huh?
I talk a lot of shit off air, though.
Yeah, you talk a ton of shit off air, but you're always like, Varn, be reasonable, calm down, like, you don't actually have to declare like a crusade on everyone who insulted you anytime on social media, like,
exactly.
Even if they are what they are. Pissing at Varn, Daniel Besner, Gene. I love Besner. I true like Besner. Funnily, is one of the most. I met him. He's one of the most pleasant people I've ever met.
Super nice guy, Besner.
So I do think maybe he's the argument. Like, if you give up hope, maybe you'll be happy. But because he is cheerfully nihilistic. It's actually a little disturbing. But he's also super nice. So,
well, he lives in LA, so
I mean, well, it's hard not to be cheerfully nihilistic in LA. God,
I'm nihilistic in Springfield. That's a lot more depressing.
That's real nihilism.
Yeah,
and I'm not nihilistic at all. And I live in Mormon land. So. Although I actually don't live in
with your sister wives. We all know why you're there, Van. You can pretend, but you've got like 15 wives locked in the basement.
15 wives locked in the basement. Yeah,
locked in the basement. Exactly. 15 wives locked in the sister wives. Van, it's like he's got like a little cult running there. He's got his online cult. He's like a dominatrix. He yells at you on the internet. It's like I'm a bad boy. I'm going to listen to Varn and listen about how stupid I am and how I'm a terrible leftist and I'm a sellout to the dem. And he's going to yell at me and tell me I'm a bad boy. That's what you do, Varn. That's the service you render here on the internet. And I think you should embrace that.
I mean, nihilistic in Wyoming. Ooh, yeah, Wyoming's rough.
Scenery there. Cheerful nihilism versus resentful optimism. Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, being resentful is fun too.
Barnes is giving the Jim Jones the 2020s vibe. So I'm not moving to Guyana and starting a cult, and I don't trust Kool-Aid. So you're okay.
That's not good. That's the danger zone for you, Varn. If you're gonna be like a cult leader nihilist, taking people to your Kool-Aid camp. I mean,
if I set up a compound in the neighboring state of Wyoming where I used to live,
you make the whole Discord like kill themselves. It's like, okay, Discord, we're gonna do this all together, right? Open your webcams. We're gonna get on the Discord chat and we're gonna drink all the Kool-Aid together.
Yeah.
Ronald.
Ooh, all right.
Red
all right.
Something like that. Anyway. Sublation would be an amazing channel if they weren't such a bunch of obnoxious Zionists and imperialists. Okay, I'm going to say this. They are obnoxious. I don't think it's fair to call them Zionists and imperialists. I just think I don't know how to describe it, Varn. Like, what are they doing? They're just like, they're not Zionists or imperialists. They're just like being like needlessly contrarian, and they're also having jackasses on. So I just don't think it's fair to call them Zionists and imperialists. Like for Catroni's, like, actually, I want them all to live in one socialist federation of the Middle East, and we should be against. It's like it's like, dude, this is a freaking very possibly a genocide going on. I don't know the utility of like going on about the positive aspects of the Israeli state is really appropriate right now. But they would say everything is appropriate at all times, and you're just being a chicken. Not just like, I don't know. It feels like talking about your dad's affair at his funeral. It's like it's not the time for it.
Anyway, Gen X brain being Gen X brain is what Gen X brain is. As I say, as a borderline Gen Xer. And on that note, we are out.
Bye.